Let's get ready to RPG!
RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG!
Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone, to the Knights of Last Call. My name is Derek Melinda, and I am excited to be back with you for another live stream. Welcome, 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 everyone. So, we'll do some chit-chat, but today we are going to be diving into our ongoing exploration series where we go ahead and look at some of the classic RPG campaign settings that came out, especially during the AD&D 2nd edition era. So we've looked so far at Birthright, which of course came out in AD&D 2nd edition, but we also looked at Eberron, which came out in AD&D 3rd edition. In fact, I think it was the only new original campaign setting that came out for D&D 3rd edition. And then we went back and we looked at Dark Sun, set in the world of Athos. Again, another AD&D 2nd edition special. That one, Dark Sun, skipped 3rd edition, made an appearance for 4th edition, and then has been absent so far in 5th edition. And the focus on brutal world of slaves and starvation and bone weapons probably means we'll never see it for 5th edition. But today we are going to be covering Planescape. And Planescape is a game, or is a campaign setting, which came out in the early 90s and made a big splash in AD&D 2nd edition, and then went away. And there was nothing in 3rd edition. There was nothing in 4th edition. In fact, in 4th edition, they completely changed up the way that the cosmology of D&D worked. And then, like so many things in 5th edition, it is not, they have a book. You know, I don't know if I want to say that there's a setting for it, but there's a book. Oh, never mind this, by the way. This is a special treat. We're still working on, we had some nice donations at Christmas time, and I'm still working on getting a top-down rig set up. But today, we will have a little bit of a top-down rig situation going on, so we can actually crack open this bad boy, and we'll get into that. So, anyways, welcome everyone. Let's see who we got here. Jackal, what's up, Jackal? Good to see you. Cooperatives here. Greetings and felicitations. Hello, hello, hello. Gonzo, welcome. Great to see you. Jonas, nice. Oh, kidney stone. Not great. Well, it depends. Depends how big it is. If it's fairly small, right, you can just take maybe a couple painkillers, some anti-inflammatory, you'll be okay. If it's large, my heart goes out to you. Pathfinder, what's going on? It is hanging all right. Thank you, Cooperative Fossils, for reminding me. Like and subscribe. Leave a comment below if you're checking this out. Have you played Planescape? Or actually, perhaps, let me put up a poll. And if you're watching on the VOD, number one, why aren't you here with us live? But number two, you should leave a comment below to answer this question. And the question is, the poll is, what is your experience with Planescape? So the first one is none at all. The second is played it in 2nd edition, AD&D. The third option is played it in 5th edition, AD&D. And then fourth option is Planescape Torment. So Planescape Torment was one of the very famous computer role-playing games that came out in the 90s. And it was one of the, like Icewind Dale and Baldur's Gate, it was one of those really, really, keystone computer game games. I will say this. I never beat that one. Beat Baldur's Gate 1, beat Baldur's Gate 2, never even played Baldur's Gate 3. Beat Icewind Dale 1, beat Icewind Dale 2, but I don't think I ever beat Planescape Torment. I think I played it and then I didn't play it. There might have been a Kickstarter years ago that was like trying to like remake or do like a remaster of Planescape Torment. I think I kickstarted that and then I never went because I wanted to go back and play it, and get it done. But I never did it. So I'm gonna crack a window. It's actually kind of warm here today in Ohio. It's like 48, 49 degrees. Once I get these streams going and I get the lights going and I get the, computer going to do the streaming, and then it's running. The fans are going. It does get a little bit warm in here. And of course, during the summertime, we have the air conditioning. What's up, Shannon? He says, I only cared about the D. Tirizelli art and the Monty Cook books, so I'm looking forward to more details from Derek. Yeah, we'll get into the art, which is obviously a huge deal about this setting. Monty Cook also had a lot of books released during this setting. Derek, I must want a lower streaming audience again. I am surprised I got notified with this title. Yes, Mark, I am looking for the few, the elite. I don't want just everybody coming in here. Well, Jonas, I hope you feel better. Ikemo says, whence does this misbegotten RPG chant come from anyway? It's a great, great line. We'll talk about the chant. We'll talk about the cant, I should say. And the chant. What's up, Erica? Hello, hello. Hey, what's going on, George? Elder Goblin Games. Welcome. Peter loved Planescape Torment back in the day. There we go. CD8 says, still have a complete set of Planescape physical products. One of the few second edition products I kept. That is really impressive. I think I own like the box set and maybe like one or two of, I think I own the Planes of, what's it called? Like the Planes of Law or something box set. And I think I own like maybe one other book. I definitely have like the Great Modron March or something around here somewhere. Cheers to the Nameless One. Hell yeah. One of the great protagonists of our time. Beamdog did a remaster. Okay, I wasn't going crazy there. Oh, okay. I'm probably thinking of Torment Tides of Numenera. I think Beamdog did remaster Torment, but not through Kickstarter. Okay, yeah, maybe I am. Okay. 50s in New York, but temperatures are about to take a dive, says Anon. Dr. Waits, welcome. Hey, glad to see you. Glad you're able to join us. Okay. All right. The Blood Wars. Okay, why is my NVIDIA app updating? Oh, all right. I just need to make sure my fans are working. Okay, good. So still have your second edition box set. That's amazing. Torment holds up if you're still playing today. The Infinity Engine looks great at high resolution. Yeah, Infinity Engine is, I think, to me, the GOAT. Oh, a Lady of Pain plushie would be awesome. I will say that. Excellent. All right. Blue Chill says, first time catching live. Welcome, Blue Chill. For my favorite setting, playing my older brother's copy of Torment exposed me to TTRPGs and changed my life. That's awesome. Hope to hear your views on the Dragonlance Saga Edition. Well, we will eventually talk about Dragonlance at some point. And when we do, we will talk about Dragonlance 5th Age Saga Edition. Literally, I have my deck of cards right here. One of my favorite game systems of all time. All right. Anyways. Okay, moving back here. All right, so let's take a look at the poll. I didn't actually see it come up here. Okay, well, the winner is 40% with none at all. No experience whatsoever in Planescape. 31% said that they played Planescape Torment. That's their experience with Planescape. So, but 70% of you is either nothing or you played Planescape Torment, a computer role play. Only 21% of you played it in AD&D 2nd Edition, and less than 10% of you, only 7%, played it in AD&D 5th Edition. Now, we're going to get into it, but I'm going to put up another poll, and I'm just curious. This is a sort of a more generic question, okay? Generically, okay, in your D&D/Trad 20 games, how often do you utilize or adventure in the planes at all. Okay? A lot, a small bit, none at all. What's a plane? Because this is something I think that it fundamentally is tied to this idea of Planescape, which is something that I think is very, very unique and interesting. And again, we're gonna get into Planescape, but I think to understand Planescape, we also have to understand the planes. And there's nothing to me that is more definitive about the fact that Dungeons and Dragons is not what people think it is than the planes. And, you know, because again, there's this whole idea here of D&D is Lord of the Rings, right? And it's never been that, because once your characters reach 9th level, okay, 9th level, you get access to the plane shift spell. And with the proper material component and key, your characters can travel the planes. In and around that time, you also get access to be able to do things like enter the ethereal plane with the ethereal jaunt spell. I think a level earlier in most D&D games, at the 4th rank, you get shadow walk to be able to temporarily enter into the shadow plane. Even in our incorporeal creatures typically draw their sort of incorporeal nature from the ethereal plane. And of course, you know, we're summoning creatures from the from the planes from a very early level. We're casting our auguries. We're talking to the, our divinations. We're talking to the gods in the outer planes. And we get access to plane shift at 9th level. That's before the halfway point of the game. We get access to plane shift before we get access to teleport. And I'm willing to bet that a lot of players, even assuming that you've even made it that far in the game, have teleported before, but not many people, in my experience, my own campaigns included, use the planes. But it's been part of the D&D game since the 1970s. The outer planes, the Great Wheel cosmology, this has existed since since Gygax. And this idea of this philosophical infinite planes of existence, multiverse. It's basically like phase 6, phase 6 MCU or whatever. It's really weird and wacky and gonzo and nothing at all like Tolkien. It's this crazy weird place where there's infinite planes of fire and planes of dust and strange planes where, there's literally a plane where it's 2 layers and they're facing each other and it's upside down, and one's upside down, or you could argue the other one's upside down. It's called Bitopia. It's weird. It's strange. It's a world of unrealistic, unreasonable characters, modrons, and these polygonal creatures and just strange things. So, but that has always been part of the game. And to my experience, I think a lot of D&D people do not do much with it. So I'm going to end the poll here, which is that, and again, the number one winner was a small bit, 40%. 35%, that's second place, none at all. 25% said a lot. So, by and large, most people either don't use the planes or they use them very, very little bit. And, I think that's, I'm not even going to say that's a shame, because the planes are weird. And it's definitely a disruption to that idea that we've talked about before, which is that, the original D&D game was a game that was supposed to change considerably. And this is my segue into Planescape, by the way. And actually, Ikemos is kind of setting me up for a segue as well. Ikemos said 5e moved plane shift to 7th level. Don't hate that, honestly. Actually, don't hate that. Shifting plane should be of higher level than teleporting in the same plane, right? Let's be clear here. And it requires tuning forks. To be clear, it always required a tuning fork, to my knowledge. A lot of 5e campaigns don't go up to 13th level. Now, that is not a new problem, Ikemos. Most campaigns didn't make it to 13th level. Hell, back in AD&D, you needed even more experience points than you would ever need in 5th edition. So, campaigns frequently petered out, reasonably so. Especially when you had characters that, might die and could only die a certain number of times. And when you did die, you had to make a resurrection chance survival if you even did get raised dead, and you might be dead forever. I'm going to crack my Diet Mountain Dew here. So the whole idea of original D&D was that the game fundamentally changed every handful of levels. The early levels were, you're a scoundrel adventurer living from paycheck to paycheck, going into dungeons. Then, at the mid levels, your character became an explorer and could travel overworld and use hex maps. Now, this idea of the game's progression was very much solidified in the very famous basic sets of the mid 80s, notably called BECMI, BECMI, which stood for Basic, Expert, Companion, Master. And the idea there is that those first 4 phases, now BECMI went up to level 36, I think, but the first 4 phases of it was level 1 to 36, was your character going from being an adventurer in dungeons to someone who traveled the world and went over, did the great Quest of the Ring over the Misty Mountains, down the Anduin River, right, to Mordor, to a lord, a leader of armies and of politics. And then finally, that last I stood for immortal. And literally the last phase of the game was that your character was taking on the responsibilities of becoming like a steward of the philosophical fate of the universe because you were so powerful. But that's just not the way that people play D&D anymore. Your adventures at 20th level are like the same adventures that you did at first level, right? You're just fighting monsters. They're just maybe, huge, and they have a lot more, tentacles or wings than they did at first level. And you're using your spells and your abilities, and it's pretty much the same. And so the game no longer, changes, really. I think people like it that way, and yet they also somehow get bored and never make it to the end anyways. However, the planes have always been part of D&D, and most people's campaigns ended before this became a reality. Enter Planescape. So Planescape was a setting that was designed to take place exclusively in the multiverse, and therefore it was, from first level, your characters would be engaged and involved in this planar landscape. And it allowed people to have this idea of being able to interact with the planes and the planar concepts without having to first reach 9th level or 13th level or 17th level or, whatever, what have you. So I think one of the first things that they kind of thought to do with Planescape was they said, hey, we have so much stuff for the planes, and most people don't ever really get to use it, or they don't get to do it. So let's make a campaign setting that allows people to interact with the planes from a very early level, even the beginning of the game, essentially. And that's the Planescape setting was born. Now, I will admit that we only played Planescape once in the 90s. And I'm being honest with you here. I was a teenager. A lot of the settings, concepts, and ideas went over my head. We didn't quite fully understand or grasp what the game was about. And back then, I think rules and rules texts were a little bit more obtuse than they might be today. Because Planescape, while it is set in the planes, and you might say, well, this is some radical, weird thing that they did from the 90s. No. The planes have always been about philosophy. The planes have always been about the power of ideas. It's literally, when we think about the Great Wheel, when we think about the Great Wheel cosmology, it is this idea of realms, entire infinite planes of existence that are fundamentally, philosophically aligned with a core idea of alignment. This is the stamp on D&D. We talk about alignment in this abstract sense, but in D&D, the existence of the planes, the existence of the Great Wheel, these are not just abstract concepts. These are very real things. If you want to know what lawful good means, we should debate what lawful good is. You don't have to, right? You can go to the 7 heavens of Mount Celestia and you can look around. That's what lawful good is. It is literally ideas and, philosophies made manifest. And that has been around since the beginning of the game. The outer planes were always like that. They were always these realms of fundamentally focused philosophy. Now, that might be interesting to a certain extent. But the problem with that is, number one, some of the planes are really boring. And we'll eventually talk about this when we talk about like the 4th edition setting, which didn't really have a name, but some people called it the Nentir Veil or the Points of Light setting. But one of my problems that I had with the Great Wheel cosmology is that some of the planes were very boring. Like the elemental planes were literally just like infinite planes of air, infinite planes of solid rock, infinite planes of just nothing but fire. See, when you think of a plane of fire, you're thinking of like this kind of lava-like, area with stuff floating. No, it wasn't like that. It was just literally nothing but fire, just fire everywhere in all directions, including the Z-axis, forever, infinitely. And so some of these planes are a little weird because they're just this like very, very uninteresting location. Oh, the plane of salt. That'll be great. The plane of ooze. Can't wait. So that's the first problem. The second problem is the planes are fundamentally, super hyper aligned with this idea and, with of alignment, basically. And as a result of that, it becomes a little, inflexible. It becomes boring. Those people's minds are made up for them. You're not going to convince them of anything. So the idea of Planescape was one of an ideas. And of course, so when people talk about Planescape as a campaign setting, I think it's a little bit of a misnomer because as much as it is about the planes, I fundamentally think that Planescape really is about Sigil. And we'll talk more about Sigil. But the reason that I think we went to Sigil is because Sigil is not those things that we just talked about, right? Sigil is a place where competing ideas are all intermixed. See, when you go to, the the Olympian paradise of Arborea. I think I'm trying to remember names of planes. If you go to like the Olympian plains of Arborea, you're not going to find a lot of dissenting people. You're going to find a lot of, petitioners, people who've gone to the plane of their alignment, angels, angelic beings, gods, godlike beings, that are all basically in agreement with each other. And there's no real dissension because they're all the same alignment. And they're all fundamentally aligned on the same philosophy. What makes Sigil interesting is Sigil is a melting pot where all of these different philosophies and all of these different ideas are mixing and competing and rubbing up against each other. And so it makes Planescape much more feral by having this location, Sigil, as this sort of neutral ground that people can meet on. Okay, so first things first, people want to go to the plains. Second thing second, and why not do it at low level? Second thing second, because these ideas about the planes have been around forever, and it's this idea of the power of idea and thought and alignment. The third thing, I don't know how well this worked, but it was sold as this is the campaign setting that connects all the campaign settings, right? Because the idea is that everybody's using the Great Wheel, cosmology. And actually, as I recall, there's even like there's even something here in the player's guide when they're talking about, characters. Oh yeah, here it is. So one of the factions is the Outsiders, aka the Clueless, and the quote here says, "Hey, is this water deep?" Right, King of Faerun. So there's this idea that the characters themselves, are linked. That all the campaign settings are linked. And so you can have your characters from a Dark Sun campaign. Now you can go into Forgotten Realms and you can do it through Planescape or no matter what campaign setting you're playing, right? It's going to be inside of Planescape. So you can take a trip through the Astral Sea and you can go ahead and visit, the Sigil and start having adventures here. So it was kind of designed to try to bring everything in-house and try to make it so that everybody can, work on that stuff together. So I don't know how well that really worked, but it, it was a thing. Let's see here. more like Planescape, right? No, it's actually one of the most graphically, in my opinion, one of the most graphically amazing and intriguing settings of all time. We'll talk about this a lot as we get into it, but this is something we talked about this with Dark Sun. Dark Sun, a lot of the art, I mean, not just some of the art, a lot of the art was done by Brahm and really set the tone for the game. And the same thing is true with Planescape with an artist named Tony D. Tirolesi. And Tony D. Tirolesi did almost like so much of the art. And I first became aware of his art from the 1989, 1990 Monster Manual, the second edition, just because I thought his art was so visually stunning and different in a kind of, kind of a, I don't know if I want to call it like a fairy tale way, but his art is not this sort of, was not like the gripping epicness of Larry Elmore and geesh, I'm having a mind blank. But anyways, it wasn't like the epic kind of Dragonlance type art. It was weird and it was, kind of strange and unusual, and it really stood out. And we're used to nowadays where, I don't know, 20 artists, 30 artists work on a product, each one probably getting subcontracted out from an art director. This was at a time and a place where one artist's vision for a setting really permeated, not just through one product, but through maybe the entire product line. And so part of this, and part of the reason this is a bad idea is that some people may not like that art. And then if you don't like that art, you're going to be turned off from the entire product line. Whereas nowadays it's like the art is so easy to sort of bypass and forgive that you just move, you move around it and come back to something else. If, that one piece I don't like, but I like the other 89 pieces, so you don't lose any customers here. If you don't like this art style, you're going to be kind of shit out of luck. So I'll have my PDF so that we can have a better look at it. But I just, I have my Planescape box, so I thought we could take a look at it. What did you get for $30 US back in the mid 90s, right? That's what we're here to find out. For starters, it's crazy that this thing is $30, but there we have it. All right. Glory, majesty, you don't know the dark of it. Discover the multiverse. Enter infinite universes of infinite variety, worlds beyond the prime material planes of the AD&D game. Explore Sigil, the city of doors, filled with portals to every level of every plane. All you need is the right key. We'll get through this stuff here. Until now, only the most powerful wizards could peek into the magnificent multiverse, but no longer. Gone are the unimaginable distances and the insurmountable obstacles that only the ultra-powerful could hope to overcome. Now, even the greenest adventurer can enter the planes, though surviving is another matter. Have at it, berk. Powers, proxies, planars, petitioners, and wondrous monsters await just beyond the portal. Step through and partake in the infinite excitement of Planescape adventures. So, $30 US gets us this awesome box set. All right. We open it up here. So we start off here with the Player's Guide to the Planes. It's a softcover book, table of contents, 32 pages. And we're going to spend some time basically going through this in the PDF. I just kind of want to show you guys quickly what we've got here. Just the style of the art and some of the beautiful things. This is going to be very important. This is where most of our game is going to take place. This is Sigil, which is mounted horizontally on the inside of a torus, floating atop a magnificently huge spire in the center of the Outlands, or sometimes called the concordant plane of opposition, but most often called the Outlands. And then we talk about people that live here. Primes are people from the prime material plane. Planers are people who are born in the planes. And petitioners are the reconstituted spirit bodies of people who were on the prime material plane, died, and then came to the planes after their death. Proxies are people who are acting on behalf of a power. Powers are the big players, right? The big deities and the demon lords and all this other stuff. So Then we can make our character, and we have some new races like the Barrier and the Githzari, and yes, the Tiefling. Dun dun dun. I'm not 100% sure, but this is like where Tieflings really became a thing. And then we're definitely going to talk a lot about factions, and in particular because it's a big part of what drives the game. So we're not going to go through all these, but there we go. So these are the different factions of the game, and they have certain benefits if you join those factions, and they mean different things. So we'll go through the factions in our PDF for just a closer look. All right, next up, we get our 4-panel DM screen. We're also going to definitely talk about this fine looking bitch. This is the Lady of Pain. She is the undisputed, unquestioning ruler of the city of Sigil, although she doesn't really rule it, but she is definitely in charge. And she kind of permeates the setting and is another example of some of the weirdness that kind of permeates the whole setting. And then what do we got here on this? I think this is just a normal AD&D 2nd edition screen. Oh, this is cool. You got a faction reaction chart, so you can tell how different factions react to different factions. And of course, you have saving throws and turning on dead tables and weapon tables and thacos. But, hey, look, we also have a schematic drawing of the outer planes, which is not something you would normally maybe get in your game. But hey, look, it comes with its own GM screen and 4 panels. Then we get a much thicker book, which is a DM's guide to the planes. This is information all about all the different planes. It's about, there's our Lady of Pain herself. And I mean, again, this was the art on the thumbnail. This is definitely a Tony D piece. There is just something about this art style that it either grips you or you're not about it. But this basically talks about all the planes. It talks about how to travel the planes. It talks about the inner planes, which are really boring and stupid. Let's go to the quasi-elemental plane of vacuum. Woohoo! All right. And then it talks about the outer planes. So this book pretty much is only about the planes. Now, the third book and the thickest book is called Sigil and Beyond. And this book is all about Sigil. And it's all about the areas of the Outlands, which is the area around Sigil. So it's about Sigil, the Outlands, and Gate Towns, which we'll talk about those when we get into this. But in my mind, this is the meat of the setting. I like to think of it as like, one of the things that's cool about Sigil is the idea that any door, any portal, like a hole in the wall, a window, certainly any doorway, could be a portal. In fact, it probably is a portal to somewhere if you have the right key. And this is the way that the game sort of skirts around this idea of you being high level in order to plane travel. You don't need to be. Because, a level 1 adventurer who finds out that, some, rusty, the bathroom to some really divey bar, it's some really divey tavern at the bottom end of the lower ward, right? If you go through it with this, mangy old boot, you'll be teleported to, the 2nd level of hell. And so your characters can go to hell. And in my mind, Sigil is your home base. It's where everything is based. The planes are just places where you go and have little missions or adventures. We'll talk more about this, and if I don't talk about it, we should definitely talk about it. In my opinion, Planescape is the setting. This is the best D&D setting to use for playing Blades in the Dark. Because Sigil is basically like perfect for this. And going on these sort of like sketchy missions is exactly what Planescape is all about, in my opinion. All right, then we get a map. We get a poster map. So again, Sigil is built on the inside of basically on the inside of a tire. And here's a map of it. And of course it wraps around. So when you're inside Sigil and you look straight up, well, when you look down the street or behind you, you'll always see the road curving ahead of you, right? It's going to be curving and up. And then if you look over you, assuming it's not gray and drizzly and rainy, you'll just see the other side of the city. So it's a very unusual city, to say the least, So we get that cool poster map. Is there anything on the back? Oh, yep. There was something on the back. On the back, we've got... Sorry. We've got this art of the city, black and white drawing of the city by Dana Knutson. But, you know, literally, they were just like, back in the day, they're like, let's just make stuff that you can like just hang up and frame. All right, what's next? Next, we've got a poster map of all of the factions. So we've got the Athar, the Believers of the Source, the Bleak Cabal, the Fated, the Dustmen, the Doom Guard, the Fraternity of Order, the Free League, the Harmonium, the Sign of One, the Revolutionary League, the Mercy Killers, the Society of Sensation, the Transcendent Order, and the Chaositecs. And then all sorts of information about who lives on what planes, a guide to the known deities and their origins and worshippers by plane, of course. They don't make them like they used to, do they, Peter? Then we get a color view picture of the Outlands. Now remember, the Outlands are the neutral plane with the giant spire of Sigil in the center. And then as you move out from the spire, you go towards the edge of this paradoxically infinite, yet somehow not infinite. But you basically start moving more towards the outer planes, right? That's the great wheel that surrounds the concordant plane of opposition. So also called the Outlands. And so as you get closer and closer, the land will begin to change and become more and more like that plane. And eventually you will reach what's called a gate town. And at the gate town, there is a portal, a actual gate that you can walk through that will take you to the first layer of that plane. So if you set out from the spire, from Sigil, and you make your way towards Elysium, the ground, you know, it'll become more and more pleasant and rolling hills and beautiful. And eventually you'll reach the town of Ecstasy. And inside Ecstasy is a portal. No key needed. It's like an active, always active portal that will take you through out of the neutral plane and into the plane of Elysium. However, on the other side, let's say we walked away from the spire this way and we started moving towards Baator, aka the Nine Hells. This was also during the 90s and second edition when they didn't really call things hell. They didn't call them demons or devils. They called them Batazu and Tanari. Anyways, but you're moving towards Baator, aka the Hells. And you can see that the land becomes much more, you know, nasty and scary and craggly with rocks and spires. And then you reach the town of Ribcage. And the Ribcage contains a portal to hell. And then here is a more kind of full picture of what we're dealing with here, as if we need this. Of course, we know all this, of course, by heart, right? You've got your prime material plane. Now, the prime material plane is composed of a bunch of crystal spheres, okay? And the crystal spheres are, each one of those is basically a campaign world, right? So one of these crystal spheres is Torel. One of these crystal spheres is your homebrew campaign. One of these crystal spheres is Athos, but not really, because they actually described that the Dark Sun campaign world is actually like lost in the prime material plane. But anyways, these are the things that when you talk about the Spelljammer setting, yes, Derek, exactly. So the Spelljammers basically can travel within this prime material plane and between the crystal spheres. All right. Then the prime material plane is coterminant, right? So it overlaps with two planes. One is the ethereal plane, and the other one is called the astral plane. And these are called the transitive planes. So if these are the prime material planes, the ethereal plane and the astral plane are the transitive planes. So the ethereal plane overlaps with the prime material, as does the astral. Through the ethereal plane, you can reach the fundamental planes of existence, the inner planes. And this is where you get your planes of air, earth, water, and fire, as well as the positive energy plane and the negative energy plane. But between each of the elemental planes, there is a para-elemental plane. So between fire and air, you have the para-elemental plane of smoke. Between earth and fire, you have the para-elemental plane of magma. Between earth and water, ooze. And between water and air, ice. However, between each of those elemental planes, you have also a quasi elemental plane, which is between positive and negative. So, for example, between air and a positive, you've got lightning, and between air and negative, you have vacuum. No one ever used these. These sucked. I'm just saying. I'm not saying it, but I'm saying it. I was never a fan of these elemental planes. I think 4th edition D&D's world, 4th edition's cosmology did so much better with all of this, with the elemental chaos, and we'll cover that someday. I find the elemental planes to be extremely and exceptionally boring in almost every capacity. However, through the astral plane, we get to the outer planes. And the outer planes concludes the Outland with our Sigil, Spire, Sigil, as well as all the different planes of existence that we're sort of familiar with, the 16 planes of the Great Wheel. We're not done yet. Hey, well, thank you, Alternate GM. Planescape Hype, dedicated to the legendary Ron from my weekly group. He played OG Planescape 2nd Edition. Our 5e campaign started in Faerun, but now centered around Sigil and multi-plane hopping mystery. Awesome. That's excellent. That's very cool. I'm glad that people are out there using it, and I'm glad that you're enjoying it, and I'm glad that the tradition is still alive in 5th edition. That's amazing. Also, I think plane hopping mystery is very appropriate for this book as well, for this setting as well. Thank you, Alternate GM. That is amazing. I appreciate you. Lastly, we've got the Monstrous Supplement, a 30-page monsters book that looks like about 15 new monsters or details of monsters. This is one of my favorite. I actually literally flipped over to one of my favorite monsters in the entire game, in that it's completely weird, bazonkers, weird, clockwork orangish. We'll talk about the Dabos in a second when we get to this book in the PDF form. And then that's it. There was probably like a newsletter card that you could have filled out, but that is Planescape. And that's what you used to get for $30. 5, 6 books, poster maps. I do think that Dr. Waits, I do think that they made a Planescape compendium book. Could be wrong. Let me check. I'm assuming that this is the PDF, but I'm assuming that these were designed to be punched out because it's part of the Monsters Compendium Appendix. Do you have the PDF of the Planewalker's Handbook? Yes. I do. All right, so, well, I don't know how much of these other books we're going to get a chance to get into, but I do want to kind of cover. And again, by the way, if you have any questions or comments, or you want to ask anything, feel free to drop a super chat or a tip, or just ask a question, and I'm happy to dive into it, and we'll kind of talk about it. So again, Planescape setting is, for my money, one of the weirdest settings in the game world. But the whole idea here is that your characters are literally fighting for control of the fundamental nature of existence. All right. And so when we talk about, so one of the first things that we got to think about here is the Outlands, right? The map that we were looking at. So one of the things that we have to understand here is that ideas mean power in this world. So first and foremost, when everyone in a place starts to become lawful good, the idea of the planes, the deal of the outer planes, is that the outer planes is thought and belief given form. Like the prime material plane, and really the inner planes, right? Fire and water. Those are places of matter, right? M-A-T-T-E-R, like stuff, matter. Okay. And actually another way to think of it is, the inner planes earth, air, fire, water. Those are the planes of matter. And the outer planes are the planes of thought, of idea. And the prime material plane is kind of where they mix. And that's kind of where we get, you know, our normal D&D ideas. But one of the things that's really interesting about this concept of the outer planes is that if enough people believe something, it actually starts to shape and change reality to fit it. Right? The reason that Mount Celestia is so nice and pretty isn't because, you know, that's just the way it is. It's that way because the belief and the power of the people who live there essentially shape the nature of their reality. I thought we had this picture. Here we go. Yeah. So when you're in, you know, when you're in Mount Celestia here, you are literally the way that you're thinking, the way that you're perceiving changes reality. And that means that if enough people believe something different, or if enough people believe something, then it becomes true. And nowhere is this more apparent than here in the Outlands. So this is the neutral plane, right? But you can see how it is completely surrounded by all the different 16 planes of existence. Now, where the plane starts to bleed into the sort of neutral Outlands, you get a gate town. But the idea of these gate towns is that if enough people, if enough people in Automata become lawful neutral and like super lawfully aligned, this gate town and all the people in it, in fact, this whole area of the neutral plane will shift into Mechanus and become part of that plane. So this is not just, you know, this is philosophy as war, because the way people think literally shapes the way that existence matters. If for some odd reason enough people in this neutral realm of the Outlands, right, could come to believe in the power of, you know, the abyss, then this plane would become the abyss. And, you know, the demons would win. So all of these different planes are literally competing for domination. Their ideas are in constant friction. And there is no greater prize, if you will, than Sigil, which is obviously the center of the universe, essentially. Now, where PCs become really cool and become really interesting in Planescape is that in Sigil, the Lady of Pain has absolute rule, but she doesn't seem to care. It's really weird in that the Lady of Pain has some specific rules, but she doesn't have an agenda. And her main thing that, as far as anybody, now, the Lady of Pain is full of secrets, and, you know, is she a prisoner there? Is Sigil hers? Is she Sigil? And I'll be honest with you, like, there might be some things that have been spoiled over the years. I don't actually know the answer to those. But what I do know is that the Lady of Pain has two basic main rules. Rule number one is you can't worship her. If you start trying to worship her or praise her, she will kill you. She will literally flay you alive with razors, aka the Lady of Pain. She's literally surrounded that decorative halo around her. It's like a neck instrument or a neck instrument. It's a scarf of razors. And then secondly, if she bans all gods from Sigil. No matter how powerful of a divine being you are, you cannot enter Sigil. You are banned from entering Sigil, no matter how powerful your gods are. And this means that Sigil has to be fought for by proxy. The people, the factions that are all warring for the hearts and minds of the universe do so in Sigil. But the big players, the biggest of players, the gods, the people where you go, why do they need PCs? Can't the gods just come here and figure it out? And the answer is no, they can't. They can't go to Sigil. And Sigil is quite literally the center of the multiverse. So this is the most important city in the multiverse, and all the powerful, super powerful powers, the gods and the demigods, are banned by some ancient unknowable pre-existence being known as the Lady of Pain, who has absolute authority to keep them from coming here, which means that the people who have to make a difference are people like you, people like a PC, and it's your interaction that makes this difference. So I should also note, as we're talking about deities, we've talked about the actual shape of the world changing, but also realize that, and this is sort of more of an acceptable, this is more true of most D&D campaigns, the idea of a god or a pantheon is also tied directly, and this is true in Faerun, and this is true in a lot of different cosmologies. The power of a god is directly tied to the power of the worship that god receives. So if enough people believe in a god, they will become stronger. They will become greater. They will become more powerful. And, in some ways, you might even view a god as sort of being a, physical manifestation of people's beliefs. And so, a goddess has every reason to want to try to convert people to believe in her, or she may be responsible for certain areas of what are called portfolios. And in that case, if she can expand the influence of that portfolio, if she can make more people worship that, she can almost draw that energy, that energy of belief from the multiverse and become strong and powerful. And Jonas makes a great, there's a very famous adventure called Dead Gods. And the whole point of Dead Gods is that sometimes gods, right? What happens to a god when people stop worshiping them? What happens to a god when they run out of juice? And the answer is they basically become like a floating deity corpse cast out into the endless astral plane, right? And that is literally the fate of someone. So these gods, their fervency and their belief is literally not just for their power, but it's for their survival. So there's a lot at stake here about winning over the hearts and minds of the people. This is like taking alignment, and how a lot of people are like, alignment is dumb and we shouldn't use alignment, and alignment. This is like not just doubling down on it. It's like quadrupling down on it, quintupling down on it. Alignment is like everything in this campaign setting. What happens if the Lady of Pain tries to leave Barovia go? Olaf. Okay. They both fail. Isn't that the answer of what happens when a immovable object meets I can't remember. I don't know. The Lady of Pain certainly has undisputed power in Sigil, but does she have unlimited power in the demiplane of Dread? Don't know. I don't know. Anon says, in many ways, she's the antithesis of ideologies, which is exactly what you need to moderate such a diverse group of ideologues. Exactly. Now, as I said before, young Derek, a lot of this went over my head because, the way, and this idea of the fervency of belief, the power of belief, the competition of ideals, this is like, I mean, we see in our own world how impactful politics can be to the world around us. But in this world, it is quite literally changing the landscape. I mean, we might think of it changing the landscape, on a slower scale or on a more metaphorical scale. But here it quite literally can change the nature of existence, of how people think. Right. And that's a good thing. She's unbiased as it gets, and she eliminates anyone that tries to weaponize her in an ideological manner, right? If you try to worship her, she strikes you down before you can, because she does not want to be an idea. She wants to be the opposite of an idea. Benjamin says, it's crazy how in the 90s, everybody just agreed that reality is whatever people believe it is. Yeah, that is true. What's up, Mike? Hey, I'm glad you're here. Ahoy. Damn glad to be here for the Lady of Pain's inscrutable plan. No one claims what it is. This came out when I was in the army. This made great argument material in the barracks. Yeah, so again, this is pretty high concept stuff. Obviously Dark Sun was a world that took the core D&D experience of, going into dungeons and killing stuff and sort of turned it on its head a little bit by making it a world that is less like the fantasy Europe Lord of the Rings that we were used to, and making it much more, brutal and harsh. But it was still fundamentally rooted in sort of something that we could kind of call a D&D campaign. This most certainly and definitely was not. So for those of you who don't know your Great Wheel cosmology, I think we'll just go around real quick. The Great Wheel cosmology is very strange because we're all very aware, right, of the 9 alignments. And you might say, so how are there so many different planes? And it's because they have planes between the planes, right? So for example, Mount Celestia is our lawful good plane. Okay, it's, you know, the 7 mounting heavens the 7 mounting layers of heaven. And Mechanus is the lawful neutral plane, literally a plane of spinning gears and, like modrons and like absolute law, right? Absolute mechanism. However, between it, you have the plane of Arcadia. And Arcadia is not lawful good, and it's not lawful neutral. It's somewhere in between. Right? So it's like lawful neutral tending towards good, or it's lawful good tending towards lawful neutral. So in a sense, even amongst the planes that are next to each other, there's this idea of there being sort of a competition, right? Because here you have this idea of expressive of lawful good. And here is this idea of this expression of lawful neutral. But between them is a plane that sort of represents something in between both, right? Arcadia is not as, wholly aligned to good as Mount Celestia is, but it's not wholly aligned to like law as Mechanus is. It's something in between. And that means that it's an area, or it's a group, or it's a place that ideas could be fought over. Now, we might not think of Mechanus and Mount Celestia warring, but you could imagine a world in which, there's idea of there's like a ideological battleground here between these two sort of ideas. Which is the better way to show and manifest law, through good or just through pure law? And that competition can be seen here in the existence of the plane of Arcadia. Similarly, we mentioned Mount Celestia as lawful good. Well, over here is Elysium, literally a beautiful paradise world of rolling hills in the Shire, and it is neutral good. But between neutral good and lawful good, we have Bitopia, which is neither, Now, Cooperative Waffles says, they do not war, they debate. Cooperative Waffles, yes, I say war, I should say conflict, right? And you're right, that is part of the nature of their existence, right? Is that they are going to discuss and have debate and, all this other stuff. So I agree with you, Cooperative Waffles. Now, I should note, by the way, that generally speaking, the in-between planes tend to be very, very nice. So, for example, would I want to live in Mount Celestia? No, it's a little too hoity-toity, right? It's all like, we're lawful, but we're also good, very paladin-like. We're not about that. Okay. What about Mechanus? Well, no, it's just too rigid. You need like a permission to drink water. But, Arcadia, on the other hand, it's like law, but tempered with some good, but not so stringent, right? So it's like, it's very nice there. And it's like Mount Celestia, obviously very nice and ordered, but a little stodgy. And Elysium, it's like everybody's just so nice and so good. It's just everyone's only just focused about who's being the nicest. It lacks a little bit of structure. But then Bitopia is a real nice plane. It's got 2 layers, right? And they're like this kind of like wild, amazing, like beautiful place, but it's not so beautiful like Elysium, and it's not so ordered like Mount Celestia. And they're just always the best. And so moving around, we have the Beastlands, Arborea, Esgard, Limbo, Pandemonium, the Abyss, Carcery, the Grey Waste, Gehenna, and Baator, aka Hell. Okay, so you have the Abyss, which is of course what we think of as demons, and the infinite layers of the Abyss, and then and then over here we have Baator, aka the devils. And this is the basis, right? We talked about ideological ideas. Well, here are what we would call the lower planes. Okay, Baator, the 9 hells, is lawful evil, and the Abyss is chaotic evil, and in the middle is the Grey Waste, which is neutral evil. And then between neutral evil and lawful evil, we have Gehenna, and between neutral evil and chaotic evil, we have Carcery. The Blood War was the term given to the fact that even the evil creatures are fighting for ideological dominance. And the idea here is this represents, from lawful evil to chaotic evil, this is the spectrum of evil. And who is going to dominate evil? The devils and their hellish dominion of law, or the demons and their embracing of chaos. And whereas we talked about, up here, they might just have, having fervent debates. Down here, they quite literally battle and war for not just the fate of, the souls of the innocent, but for the souls of the evil, right? They are quite literally fighting each other for domination of this idea of what is it to be evil. And so even the bad guys aren't like so monotheistic, right? Like, it's not just team bad guy. They have their own motives and they have their own sort of rationales as well. And this forms the undercurrent for what we call the Blood War, which is this battle between demons and devils, which of course in this setting we're called monolithic. Thank you, Lance. That's the word I was looking for. Let's see here. Just seeing what I have. Yeah. So this, by the way, is certainly one of the most famous pieces of art that came out of Planescape. Things were a little bit more risque back then, my friends. So this is the Blood War deluxe box set. That is, of course, a Merilith. And this was a box set all about Relative Dimension says Meriliths were hot back then. No, they sure were. So again, there's because I'm trying to remember what it was like to be me, right? Back then. Jonas says, because this is just awesome. Thank you, Jonas. That's awesome. Thank you. The new monster manual art is just a travesty. Do I have that? I don't think I have my 2024 monster manual up here. Anyways, I was going to look it up. Is it the same as it was from 5th edition? Like, is the 2014 Merilith the same as the 2024 Merilith, or is it actually different? No, Caterpillar Slug Monster. And I mean, we could go off on a whole thing here, but so one of the things about, so someone earlier had mentioned about, do we have any settings like this anymore? And my answer is going to be kind of no, because in some ways what this setting was doing, right, was humanizing the monsters, but still making them evil. And that is kind of not where we're at nowadays. In the modern zeitgeist, the modern zeitgeist is that things are either monsters, right? And they're monsters, or they're a player character race, right? And they're something that you would play and, cosplay as and get some OC art made, right? And post it on Reddit and try to farm karma. Yeah, I'm talking to you. So, which is fine. I mean, that's the direction that they want to go in, which is fine. And arguably, I would think that's actually kind of more towards the original D&D, right? I've talked about before. Alignment originally existed in D&D to make it easy to go kill monsters, right? And just to go, just go and hey, look, that orc's evil, kill it. Hey, look, those are orc children. Well, they're evil too. Kill them. Hey, it's a demon. Kill them, right? And not feel any bad about it because they are evil with a capital E. In AD&D 2nd edition, you were still evil with a capital E, but they were making, this was the era of Vampire had come out, 91 or something? I mean, this was the era of White Wolf. This was the era of, the protagonist was evil, right? And you were supposed to, in some ways, lament and sort of feel for these potentially evil characters. And they weren't good like anti-heroes, but coming from a dark race, like Dritz. No, these were like very complex ideas that these characters were evil, but that didn't mean that they didn't have any redeeming qualities, even if they were evil. And that's not something that I think really goes over well today in today's audiences. I think people want cut and dry, easy answer things. And that's why I think everything is either a monster and like monstrous, and it's very clearly a bad guy, capital B, capital G, or it's something that you could make as a player character race. And it's, it's more like, and its choices are up to it. It can be anything it wants to be, right? Very much the goth kids playing vampire at 2 a.m. at the IHOP. Actually, I have a vampire story. When I was growing up in the 90s, we would go to, certain game stores or whatever, and sometimes they would have back rooms or stuff like that. And we would see the people LARPing, and everyone this is early internet era. So, there was a lot of like misunderstanding about stuff, but even as gamer kids, we would make fun of the LARPers, right? Because we thought that was like on another level of dorkiness, of geekiness. So cut to the end of the 90s, early 2000s, I graduated high school, college, and we start going to Gen Con. We start going to Origins. We start going to Gen Con. And Dr. Metropolis tipped $3.
Metropolis tipped $3. This stream really updated my journal.
This stream really updated my journal.
Hiya, I'm Grimmeth, and welcome to a Let's Get On With It short. I'm going to be trying the enhanced edition of Planescape Torment. The original version came out at the end of 1999.
Oh, no, what's that? Come on.
Hey, Chief. You okay?
I thought I wanted this just to be... What is all these people? I'm looking for something that's just like, I updated my journal. Ugh, man, it's so hard. I wanted to find something that was just like me. I uploaded my journal. All right, updating my journal. Updating my journal. All right, anyways. Okay, I was looking for that. Thank you, Dr. Metropolis. I was looking for an audio clip from Planescape Torment. Anyways, we used to make fun of LARPers. And so when we started going to conventions, we went to Gen Con and we like saw them. They were everywhere at Gen Con. They were out on the streets. And it was, after hours, and we would see them outside of outside the convention center. And, we didn't know which LARP it was. Or there was some sort of vampire LARP. Well, our buddy, Justin, who we grew up playing gaming with, he's talking to this girl and before the night, and he goes, I'm going to go over there and LARP with them. And I go, we're like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, dude, the girl, she's cute. She's hot. Like, I think I can score with her or whatever. So he's over there and he's like, I'm just trying to get with her, hook up with her. So we're like, okay, whatever. What a price to pay. So that was like the first night, a Thursday night. And then it's like Fat Friday night. And then like, he doesn't show up to like our gaming. We're like, where's Justin? And then like, we're like, where were you? He's like, oh, I was LARPing again or whatever. Oh yes. Dr. Waits, the bowels of Union Station, the Omni Severin, which is where we actually stayed our first night. That's actually our first story ever. It's a good, funny story. That's another story, Dr. Waits. But yeah, Union Station. This is the area over by the Union Station, over by the edge of the convention center. So like that underpass there between Union Station and the con hall. And so the third night comes and we see him over there, and he's like wearing like a black jacket, and we're looking over there and we don't see the girl, and we're like, Justin, what are you doing? He's like, I'm playing. And we're like, well, where's the girl? He's like, she's not here. We're like, why are you here? He's like, I like it, man. Okay, I'm a familiar. They're gonna make me into a vampire tonight. And it was just like this classic moment of where he was just like, he went there, he legitimately went there to try to, hook up with this girl. And then he ended up like loving it and ended up playing it for like the whole convention. So it was really, really funny. No, our first experience with LARPers at Gen Con was Gen Con 2000 and, well, Indy was like Gen Con 2003. and we went and we stayed at the Omni Severin downtown. And we read on the book that there was open gaming in the basement of the Omni Severin where you could like go and set up a table and play. So it was like me and all my D&D friends, 2003, we're playing 3rd edition D&D. And so we go into the basement and we look around and it's Wednesday night, right? It's before the con opens. And it's Wednesday night and we go downstairs, we find a table, we just kind of make our way in and, you know, it's open gaming. And we find a table in the back, we sit up, we start like pulling out our D&D stuff. But like apparently we were in the middle of like LARP Central, and we were actually like set up, and of course they didn't own anything, and so they couldn't say anything because, you know, if they had to, we would have like given them shit. But like that was like the prince's private chambers, and like we were in the middle of like this massive LARP, and we weren't like trying to be disruptive. It was just, sorry guys and gals, it's the open gaming area. It's for everybody. You don't get exclaimed. So there's like the group of us just being like, you know, 20s, early 20s, just nerd gamers, you know, trying to play D&D. And like over in the corner, like this is supposed to be like the prince's private antechamber where he's, you know, planning for Indianapolis by night. And it was just like, you could tell that they were just like, oh, these fucking guys, like why won't, you know, please leave. But they can't say anything because it's an open gaming. And we weren't trying to like ruin their fun. We were just doing what we were doing. And so that was always kind of a slippery slope there for sure. Right. It's the classic slippery slope. Show up to LARP for the girl, end up staying for the LARPing. It happens. It happens. Yes, we added our own era of cringe ambiance. So going back to Planescape, what's really one of the key things about this game is you have all these different planes. Okay. And all of these different ideas in the form of alignment. But it's a bit abstract and it's a bit esoteric. And remember too, like we said, the powerful demon lords, the gods of Mount Celestia, they can't even go into Sigil because Sigil is where the Lady of Pain holds domain and she does not allow those powers to be there. And I think this is one of the smartest things that they did in this game, which is instead of having, the, what's going on here? There we go. Okay. Instead of having this kind of abstract idea to deal with, what they instead dealt with, or what they kind of represented these philosophical ideas with, were factions. And the idea of factions were, let's see if we have here, the factions of the plane, right? So, and right here, so relative dimension, the powers that be have declared that it is actually pronounced Sigil. It is not pronounced Sigil. It is pronounced Sigil. So I think this kind of sums up Planescape in a nutshell. Race and class don't make a whole person on the planes. A body's got to have a philosophy, a vision of the multiverse and what it all means. Now, if you've been watching this channel recently, you know, is that they pronounced it as Sigil in one of their later videos. Well, they can name their project Sigil whatever they want. They can call it Sigil, but Planescape called it Sigil. So if you've been watching the show a lot lately, you know that we've talked about games that I've been really about. One of them being Burning Wheel and Burning Wheel style games. We're playing Torchbearer right now. Mouse Guard is one of my favorite games of all time. And what does Mouse Guard say? Mouse Guard says, it doesn't matter what you fight, right? But it's what you fight for. And Torchbearer, which is ostensibly a D&D old school game, you go into dungeons and have torches, but the way you gain experience and level up is through fighting for your goals and your beliefs. So this is that, but 30 years earlier. earlier, because the idea here is it's not really about what your race and class are. It's your philosophy, and it's what you believe in. Okay. And, you know, how's he going to know his friends from his enemies in places where what he stands for can mean everything, right? A body's got to have a place to stand in order to see the majesty of the whole things. On the streets of Sigil and beyond, philosophies are more than just ideas. They're groups. They're factions with leaders, goals, powers, and attitudes. Every faction has its own way of seeing the multiverse and has its own powers to match. Some of them get along, some of them don't, and others could care less. Factions are a bit like character kits, which is like subclasses, kind of, sort of, from 5th edition. The only thing that matters is alignment, and even then, it sometimes doesn't matter. Factions provide a basher, that's like you, a player, with a way to understand the planes. It's not the same as alignment, but it's close. So again, the idea is like you have this like these concepts of like good and evil and, you know, law and order and heaven and hell. But what they do to make it much more personal and much more reasonable and much more understandable is they break the game down into these factions. And years later, now, of course, back then I didn't understand faction-based play and, you know, and all that other stuff. And, you know, the Blades in the Dark, you know, ideas that would come into being and stuff like that. But this is why I say this is like the best setting ever for a Blades in the Dark, or I should say a Forged in the Dark game, because Forged in the Dark games are all about faction-based play. This is a game where, you know, your player characters could quite frequently, you know, be running with and running against all these different factions who are all sort of, you know, have these different competing ideas inside Sigil. They are all fighting for their belief. And what's cool about, you know, the Planescape is that this isn't just a, you know, a debate among philosophers. This is not just a, you know, a debate among philosophers. It's actually for, you know, coming to an understanding of power that is possible through your belief. Okay. So like, it's not just some esoteric thing about like, oh, you guys should believe what I believe. It's literally the ability to shape and dare I say, gain power through the power of your beliefs. Okay. So for example, okay. So we start here with the Athar, okay? The Athar, also called the Lost, okay, the Defiers, okay? They basically believe that the gods aren't really gods. They're just really powerful people, just like you and me. And even if there is a true god, it would be beyond a power of our unaided understanding. And, you know, where do the gods get their power from? From somewhere else. And they basically say the planes aren't just like, you know, they aren't like, it's not literally heaven. It's, you know, land shaped by the wills of powers. Anyone could do it with enough expertise, right? If someone worshipped you enough, you could, you know, you would have the ability to create your own plane of existence. So their philosophy is basically that, you know, the gods are frauds. You should reject them. They're just very powerful, manipulating beings, or really powerful, manipulative beings. And, you know, their goal is to free mortals from this false worship. And in doing so, sort of give back freedom to everybody. Because by making people not believe, you literally can kill gods. So, like, ostensibly, they're sort of neutral evil, right? Like, I wouldn't say they're, like, good. Like, they do a lot of, like, spreading disbelief and corruption and, like, temples. But there's something about what they're doing here where you're almost kind of like, I can kind of see your point. And so the, you know, and then of course, depending on who you're a member of, the Reddit faction, You know, and part of the idea here is like, what I love about this is it's a way of taking simple alignment and really sort of making it much more, you know, complex and much more nuanced. And rather than just saying like, oh, I'm the lawful good faction and I'm the chaotic evil faction, you know, like you could do that, but I think that would be too overly simplified. And it'd be too easy to just say, yeah, we should definitely do that. We should help the good people. We should, you know, fight the bad people. The bad people are bad. The good people are good. Right. But this whole idea of this campaign setting is to make things complicated and not make things simple. So while I would consider the Athar to not necessarily be like good guys, there's also, you got to realize that like, you know, is there's something about them trying to make people, they're like, yeah, but even those good gods, they're just powerful people who are sort of getting people to believe in them. They're fakes. They're charlatans. Like, what are people doing, you know? And so it's really interesting how they, you know, sort of separate that. And so this is an example of one that isn't really tied to a specific alignment, but it's a way to sort of represent the sort of power and the philosophy of the, you know, of the universe, if you will. Now, here is believers of the source, which is sort of like the sort of opposite of that. All right. In fact, these people believe that all things are godly and all things can ascend to greater glory, if not in this life, then the next. Patience. That's what it takes. See, here's the chant. The chant's like the secret. Everything, primes, planers, petitioners, proxies that were being tested. Survive, succeed, and ascend. That's the goal of all things. Fail, get reincarnated, try again. It's pretty simple and straightforward. So believers of the source are basically kind of sort of Buddhists. They believe that every soul can ascend and find divinity. This is very Legend of the Five Rings, Shinseism. Life is about a trial of overcoming it. They want self-improvement, philosophy, personal transcendence, evolve into greater beings. So they don't view the gods as being these supreme beings. They view themselves as being sort of the end goal, that all people are on a route to godliness, right? From the very meager beginnings to the very end of existence. So it's a very, you know, and in a world where thought and belief structure existence, it makes a lot of sense that you would have this kind of belief. All right, so these are the Bleak Cabal, and also called the Bleakers. These are the what are they called? The sort of the cynics of the universe. They believe that the universe has no meaning, there is no truth, there is no order, there is no divine plan. That they reject laws, gods, structures. The universe doesn't make sense, and it's not supposed to. But in it, right, there's a sort of a positive message, even though it's kind of horrible, which is you define your own meaning in life. The universe doesn't define it for you, right? And that means that, you know, when nothing matters, you are free to determine whatever you want to matter, right? There's like a freedom in that cynicism. There's a freedom in that bleakness. Now, you can become obviously very cynical about it. But the idea here is that they kind of embrace this idea of being free of these preconceived notions about what is right and what is wrong. And, you know, even these people, as you know, horrible as they are, you know, they reject laws and gods and structures, but they often end up working in asylums and charities because, you know, they want people to sort of discover their own truth, right? And help, you know, people sort of move on. You know, you can even see here, the Bleak Cabal isn't a group that most others view neutrally. The Doom Guard, Dustmen, Revolutionary League, and Chaos Ethics all view the Bleak Cabal sympathetically. The Fraternity of Order, the Harmonium, and the Mercy Killers all have great difficulties with the Cabal's nihilistic point of view, and so must be ranked among their enemies. So again, it's a very, each of these has, in, you know, as a kid, it's like, oh, they're the bad guys. But as an adult, I believe, you know, that there's like almost a joy to what they're sort of describing here. Okay. The Doom Guard are another one that is kind of, you know, easy to sort of view as bad. also called the sinkers. They believe that entropy is the natural state of the universe, that destruction is a natural thing, that the universe is decaying and they want to move it around. And basically, they kind of think that like the universe kind of sucks, and that the natural order of the universe is to move towards decay. And then when the universe is done, there'll be nothing left. And it's the ultimate release for everyone from pain and suffering and torment. And, you know, they point to the fact that, like, you know, entropy moves, everything moves towards empathy. You know, like buildings don't spontaneously create themselves, right? They spontaneously corrode. And so when people try to fix things, when people are trying to keep things aligned, they're working against the natural order of the universe, right? This is not like some evil intent. Yeah, very chaos in line, but in their mind, they're like, no, this is the natural way of the universe. Things grow old and die. Structures fall apart. Whether we do anything or not, that's just left to their own devices. Everything will decay. And so that is what the point of the universe is. It is to decay. It is to become nothing. And, you know, we're going to help it along because that's what everything else in the universe does. And, you know, it's supposed to do that. And it says here, this is a great little line here. What right do mortals have to deny the natural existence of things? So it's like, it's you know, and like, and again, it's not like this very black and white type belief. It says, don't get this faction wrong. It's not like somebody builds a house and then they tear it down. That building's a part of the decay. The stone cutter chips away the rock. The logger cuts the tree. Later, the termites chew down the beams until the whole thing comes down on its own. It's a very long view to this, right? Everyone has a part to play in the eventual sort of destruction, if you will, of the universe. But they're doing it from a very like, this is just the natural order of things. And we shouldn't embrace that. We shouldn't go against it. And again, come on, people, this art, come on. It's incredible. All right. The Dustmen, are very, very, very interesting. So a lot of people think that like you live in the prime material plane and then you die and then your soul goes to, you know, the outer planes, to heaven, to hell, to wherever. And that's, you know, death. They basically believe that everything that's happening, including people who think they're dead, is really just a waiting period before actual true death, right? Nobody's alive. In fact, there's no such thing as life. Sure, the petitioners, that's the people who died and went to a plane, are dead compared to the rest of us, but everybody else is dead too. They just don't know it yet. So what's the chant? Simple. All these worlds and all these universes are just shadows of another existence. This multiverse, the prime material, is where beings wind up after they die. Look, if things were truly alive, would there be such pain and misery in the multiverse? Of course not. Life is supposed to be about celebration and positive feelings. Existence here is muted, dull, full of pain, twisted with celermaro. So exactly, the simulationist theory, right? Or, you know, if you watch Lost, right? Fact is, everyone else is dead. Fact is, everyone is dead. It's just that some are more dead than others. People are attaining along the lines of death. And then there's the walking dead. They've attained purity in this world, undead. They've purged themselves of passions and sense. Their goal is not to merge with the planes like petitioners. It's to purify the self, to become one of the true dead. So in their mind, the ultimate goal is to basically be just dead and to have basically been freed of your thoughts and process. But here's the sort of spin on it. This is important. In order to appreciate death in proper Dustman fashion, Assad has got to explore his so-called life to the fullest and understand his present state of existence with all of its trials before moving up the ladder of truth. The berk who gets restless and rushes things dies a fool, and he'll probably be forced to go through the whole thing again and again. That's a real waste of time. Here's the chant. Respect death and don't ever treat it like a servant. So basically, they kind of believe that we're already dead and we are just moving toward through a series of sort of death penances to finally end up with what they call the true death, which is where you are essentially undead, but like a mindless undead, right? Because then you are just, you don't have any more of your thought. You have been purged of all of that pain and all that emotion, and now you are just dead only. Weird. Yeah. Kind of make weird sense. Yes. Could you see yourself fighting them or fighting against them? Sure. Could you maybe see yourself helping them? Dr. Wade says, my Lord, that was my upbringing in the church. I mean, yeah, I mean, like, it's not like, again, the whole last couple seasons of Lost were all about like, oh, they're in purgatory. You know, this idea of basically purgatory. They're basically the purgatory faction, if you will. Okay. The Fated are people that believe that the strong deserve to rule. The weak don't deserve anything. The multiverse rewards those who can take it. They hoard wealth, power, self-reliance, and they want to gain personal power. But this is this idea of like, you know, no fate but what you make. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you know, get her done. What is the riddle of steel? Yeah, Dr. Metropolis, right? And so, again, it's right. The Ayn Rand faction. Might makes right. All of these things are absolutely correct. The capitalism crusaders, also correct. All of these things are correct. Might makes right. The Ayn Rand faction and the capitalism crusaders. And you know, this is the idea that, again, there's a certain amount of of pride in that, right? Like of working hard for what you want and taking it and working for what you want. But the idea that like, if you take something from somebody that they were too weak to keep it, that was somehow morally right, that might makes right is, you know, a little tough to swallow for some of us, especially me. Most folks think there's nothing to the fated but taking, but the takers will tell a berk it's more than that. There's lots of things a being has to earn, and he can't get them all by force. A body's got to have respect too, and that's not something you can get with force. So again, it's not just about like literal wealth. It's about power. It's about reputation. It's about, you know, taking and basically being like the best version of yourself, right? Very, you know, kind of, kind of eugenical views, I suppose, of things. Now, not great, but all of these factions are, you know, bad, but you could also kind of see it point sometimes too. And so again, that's the fate. That's the fate of the fated, also known as takers. All right, the Fraternity of Order is probably one of my favorites. So this is a group that believes everything has laws. There's natural laws. There's the laws of man. Everything is controlled by laws. The multiverse is controlled by cosmic laws. And so they study these laws because they believe that if you know the law well enough, then you can use it to your advantage. Just like if you know the city law well enough, you could probably get away with a crime. Well, if you know the cosmic law well enough, you could control reality. So they literally believe that knowledge is power, that if they can discover all laws and the way that things work, that they would have unlimited power. In that way, you know, it's a very like scientific, you know, kind of viewpoint to these folks. But, you know, they could manipulate in a world where knowledge and belief are power. It kind of makes sense that if you understood how everything worked, you would have that power yourself. And maybe there's even like an element here of like the Matrix, right? You know, when, you know, Morpheus is telling Neo, like, you'll learn that there's that world is controlled like a computer program, and some rules can be bent, others can be broken. Are you saying I can dodge bullets? No, Neo. When I'm saying when you're ready, you won't have to. So there's like an idea here that they kind of believe in that, right? None of these factions are good, I suppose. You know, no, not really, because even when I show you the lawful good faction, arguably the Harmonium, you'll kind of be like, man, they're not really that good, even though they're lawful good. Ikemo says, I expected these to be alignment based. Each faction is 1 hour playing, but it's the exact opposite. Correct. They certainly, that's what I said. I think it would be too easy to just say, here's the lawful good faction, here's the lawful neutral faction, here's the chaotic evil faction, I'm the demon, I'm the devil, I'm the angel. I think that would make it too easy, and it would make it too simple. And you would just say, like, oh, we're going to ally with the good people, and we're going to, storm the bad people. But none of these people are good. None of these people are bad. Some of them are worse than others, but maybe they're not. I don't know. It all depends on what they're trying to do. Okay, so here's the Free League, the in-depths, and they are the faction that isn't a faction. Right? They are, they believe that, that nobody, what's the word I'm looking for here? No one controls you. You make your own path. They're like anarchists, sort of. But they don't have like an agenda. Like anarchists they have an agenda. They're lawfully aligned to overthrow law. This is just, the people that nobody tells you what to do. Right. And so they believe that they just do what they want, and everybody should be free to do their own thing, and everyone should. They're like the libertarian, group, very stubborn, and very don't tell me what to do. Don't tell anybody else what to do. Everybody should do whatever they want to do. And they said the short and long of it is simple. There's nobody who's got a sure key to the truth, so it pays to keep your options open. Maybe the multiverse is like the Lost say it is, but maybe it's the way the godsmen tell it. Side with one view and find out wrong and come up a loser. There's no wisdom in that. Still, a body's got to believe in something if he wants to stay alive. The Free League's kind of an informal group of like thinkers. They share news, pass around jobs, and watch each other's back. Hey, in a place like the Plains, body can't be too careful. So again, they are very libertarian. They do what they want and, get out of their way. And don't think of too much of that. Here's a great line. Sawed off. I don't need your mumbo jumbo, right? They're just leave me alone. Okay, so here is the Harmonium, and their nickname is called the Hardheads. And this is arguably sort of the lawful good faction. Every cutter knows what it is. The Harmonium is always right. The Harmonium believe in peace through order. Everyone should follow the same rules. The multiverse works best. Maximum good is achieved when everybody follows the same set of laws. So they enforce these laws. They convert people to their belief. They push for this universal, harmonious, lawful order. And as a result, they're kind of assholes, right? This is the lawful dumb, or what do they call it? Lawful stupid or whatever, like the annoying paladin. That's like, I'm so good. Everyone should be like me. Look how good I am, and look how lawful I am. Don't you want to be like me? Even when people don't want to be like them. And they're like, no. They should be like us because we are so good. And again, you understand their philosophy. I mean, fundamentally, they're kind of lawful good, lawful neutral, but they're also assholes. On the other hand, the Harmonium say there's only one way to have peace, their way. Right? They know what's best for you, and and you'll take it. Right? And so again, while arguably this is one of the quote unquote good factions, right? I think we could all agree that we're kind of like chafing against this asshole, and we're like, fuck you. Yeah. So that's the Harmonium, the Hardheads. All right, so here are the Mercy Killers. The Mercy Killers are our sort of lawful evil, lawful neutral group. They believe in justice. And they believe that crime should be punished without leniency or exception, that there's no mercy, there's only punishment. They are, they don't really have technically they don't really have a moral agenda. I mean, I argue that they're maybe kind of evil aligned, but not really. They're just, everything is about justice. And so these are like the ultimate bounty hunters. They are like the people who go out and execute the Punisher. These are like, this is Judge Dredd in the Planescape universe. This is Judge Dredd. They believe that the justice is the only truth in the universe. Yes, lawful, evil-ish. That is correct. That's how I would describe them as well. And I believe their home plane is Acheron, which would make sense because I think Acheron is the lawful, evil-ish plane. Let me see here if it says where they're from. Here we go. The Mercy Killers are most powerful on the plane of Acheron. So, yep, there you go. That is the lawful, evil-ish plane. So, anyways, yeah. So these are the kind of the believers in justice, and that there's again here saying it's the whole reason laws exist, to see that justice is carried out. Justice purges the evil in folks and makes them better, fit to belong in the multiverse. Once everybody's been cleansed, then the multiverse reaches perfection, and perfection is the goal of the multiverse, right? So yeah, hey, everything will be great once we've purged ourselves of all of this evil. And the only way we can purge ourselves of all of this taint and misevil is by pure, unadulterated justice. Again, it's like, oh, that sounds great. And you're like, wait a second. Nope, that sounds dystopian and evil. But it is. Okay, here is the Revolutionary League. These are our anarchists. So these are the people who are quite literally, trying to bring down, all hierarchies, all governments, all power structures. They want to overthrow systems of control. That they are organized chaos in that respect. They're not necessarily trying to make things bad. They don't even have a plan. They just want to destroy what is existence and to break people free. And they want to enforce their viewpoints on everyone else, which is to, literally overthrow society and, bring everything down, because everyone's being kept in as slaves. The beliefs are lies. But look, the factols that, he's talking about the different factols are the leaders of the factions. The factols, though, have all the property, all the bodyguards, all the jink, that's coin, treasure, and influence. They're not looking for truth. They just want to hang on to what they've got, right? So they're basically saying all these people with all their bullshit beliefs, they're just using it to collect wealth and power and money and property and influence. And, they don't believe any of the shit that they're saying, right? They're just using it to convert people, to get people onto their side. All this faction warfare is bullshit. We should break free of these chains, strike down the powers that be, and let everybody just do their own thing. So yeah, we gotta throw down the old these corrupt and antiquated and out of date power structures and overthrow it. And again, you can clearly see that we are in 90s era TSR here. Hack and slash the planet. Exactly. Hack the planet. Hack the planet. All right. Now we start getting to some of the weird ones. Believe it or not, we haven't dealt with the weird ones. These are the weird ones. Okay. Okay. So the sign of one believes that all of reality is just a dream. And you might be the person who is dreaming it. And if so, you should be able to reshape the universe at will because it's your dream. So, this is obviously a very, strange one here. I'm sure there's a philosophy. I can't remember what it's called, but is it solipsism? No, is it solipsism? Is that what it's called? Solipsism? No. Oh yeah, the viewer theory that the self is all that can be known to exist. So it's kind of like that. So basically, these people believe that everyone's different and the world only exists because the mind imagines it to be. And without the self, the universe ceases to be. Therefore, each signer is the most important person in the multiverse. Without at least one signer to imagine it all, the rest of the factions would cease to exist. So some smart cuddle will say, well, what happens if two signers don't agree? What if they both think different things? Then what happens? After all, the multiverse is the same for everybody. And the answer is easy. Since you're the center of the universe, and obviously everything else is from your imagination. Simple. Nobody else really exists except of how you think of them. So of course the multiverse is the same. How else could it be? So it's like, it's very like, wait a second, what? Everyone's, of course it's this way because this is the way that I've envisioned it. This is the way I've imagined this. A lot of folks don't accept this idea. After all, they point to their own feelings and emotions, their own self as proof that the signers are wrong. And the signers simply claim that they imagined it all for you. What others feel and think isn't real. It's only what they are feeling is real. And how would you know? Now, this is the classic thing of maybe you're a robot. Maybe you're not even a real person. Maybe you're a simulation in a very advanced computer program. And you just got activated literally right now. And everything that's been happening your entire life up to this point didn't exist. It was just an illusion, and it was memories that were implanted in you. And you didn't actually exist up until a few moments ago. How would you know the difference, right? And again, getting to the very matrix-based philosophies, which came at the end of the 90s, what is real? Is real something you can touch and sense and taste? Well, then real is whatever your brain tells it to be is real. So the signers believe that reality is a dream, that they, of course, are the dreamer, and that if they could only, work on that and truly believe that they could control the universe and control the reality as they want to. Okay, the Society of Sensation, and this, by the way, I for whatever reason, as a young man, I thought she was so cute. Now that I'm looking at it 30 years later, I'm like, oh, I mean, it's fine or whatever. But as a kid, like a 12-year-old kid or whatever, I thought that the Sensate was just super. I thought this art was super cute. And I thought she looked hot. But also cool, like a badass. I loved her earrings and I loved her short hair. And maybe to this day, I still have a thing for short hair, not buzz cut, but short haired women haircut. And yeah, 90s babe. Yeah, very 90s babe. Maybe that, whatever reason it is, this is my style. Okay. So the Sensates, the Society of Sensation, the Sensates, they believe that the universe is about experience. I've actually recently read things from Brian Cox. You might know him from PBS and stuff like that. He does a bunch of science stuff. He talks about how, we are the universe, people. And so in a way, we are the universe discovering itself, right? We're made of star stuff. We're made of the primal blocks of creation, and not just from the Big Bang, right? We are made from countless generations of stars which collided, supernova, exploded these heavy elements out into the universe, which recondensed, formed our planet through biological processes, formed us. And yet we're able, for the first time, maybe, that for all we know, to be able to look at the universe and understand it. But that is not us understanding the universe, right? That is the universe understanding itself, because we are the universe. We are part of the universe. So the Society of Sensations believes that only through experiencing everything, that everything that you know of reality only can come to you through your senses, through being sensed by it. Reality doesn't exist except through sensation. Knowledge, theories, this isn't true wisdom. That wisdom only comes through that level of experience. And that the multiverse is the only way that you know that something is real. And without experience, without sensation, something just literally doesn't exist. If you can't taste the soup, it's not soup. The only way to know for sure is to experience it. And it's and look, it ain't that hard to describe. What's real? A description of a rose or a rose? And that's kind of a weird way of saying it, but yeah, okay. So their goal is to experience everything: pleasure, pain, joy, sorrow. And through doing that, they can gain a true understanding of the multiverse, and thus they can gain power over the universe, right? So they seek new experiences. They want to keep track of their sensations. They want to feel everything. They want to level up. They want to gain everything. I must put everything in my mouth. So here we go. So some berk will ask, what's this got to do with the universal truth, the meaning of the multiverse? Well, the chant, remember that's the secret knowledge, is no one's going to know the big dark, that's the big secret, until they've experienced everything. All the flavors, all the colors, all the textures of the worlds, all the colors of the wind. Only when a body's experienced the whole universe does the great dark of it all finally get revealed. It may seem like an impossible task, but there might just be a way to bob the problem. Cheat the multiverse, as it were. It just might be that the multiverse doesn't exist beyond what a body can sense. The answer to what's over the next hill might just be nothing. Given that, the multiverse has limits, and a body can try to experience it all. Don't just guzzle the wine, find the flavors within it. Before the sod's done, they'll know all the differences between an Arborean and Asgardian wine, know them by vintage and even by the hand of the vintner. Only then do the secrets of the multiverse begin to make themselves clear. Trevco, thank you, buddy. Thank you for that. I don't mean if you don't know if you meant to drop a message, Trevco, but I appreciate the super chat. That is very nice and generous of you. Thank you so much. Sensates are a Freudian wet dream. Yes. Again, you know, somebody either, you know, got their BA in philosophy and really took it to town here, or they just like opened an encyclopedia because the internet really wasn't a thing then, and just like looked up different philosophical, you know, viewpoints. That sick +1 bonus to saves, though. Hey, what's going on, Ayla? Alia says they have they have, due to their highly tuned senses, they get infravision 60 feet regardless of their race, and they get a +1 bonus to all saving throws versus poison and to avoid being surprised. What up? All right, next, the Transcendent Order. I also thought she was cool too. She's like a goat person or whatever, or maybe she's a tiefling. Yeah, she's a tiefling. The Transcendent Order believe that instinct, and that when you can act without thinking, that is the ultimate, you know, that's the ultimate achievement. That to gain enlightenment is to act without thought. And then if you are acting without thought, then you are truly in tune with the multiverse, because you are basically seamlessly flowing through the multiverse. And that you can achieve oneness with the multiverse by mastering that instinctive action. So these are like your hyper, super monk, martial art, spiritual discipline. And so, you know, and their philosophy is, it goes like this. Every berk is a part of the multiverse, and nothing is apart from it. So it figures that every being knows the right action to take at just the right moment. Remember, I just got done saying, we are the universe. We're not different from the universe. We are the universe. So it figures that every being knows the right action to take at the right moment. Problem is, some folks start thinking and mess it all up. Thinking adds hesitation and doubt. It overrides instinct and separates a sod from the multiverse. By the time a poor sod thought about something, the right action for the right moment is gone. And yeah, so it sounds like Taoism. Exactly, right. Very transcendent thought. This idea that, like, you know, creatures like animals and, you know, they're more in tune with the universe because they don't think about things, they just act. So this is, you know, all truth is found internally, that they have to work on themselves, that you can train this and work on this to, you know, trust your instincts and to turn off your thought and to become one with the universe, and to, you know, to train your mind and body to be one thing. There is no difference, no separation between thought and motion. Body and mind act as one. The hand moves before the thought reaches it. And by the way, just like even the fun little things here, like restriction. Because ciphers act unhesitatingly, they suffer a unique restriction. In play, as soon as an action is stated for a cipher player character, that cutter is committed to the action. The player can't say, oh, wait, I changed my mind. Bashers who pause to consider or debate pending actions are failing to adhere to their philosophy. All right, the Chaos Attacks are next. The Chaos Men. These are the... how do I describe this group here? They are... that everything is random, that the universe was born from chaos. Not only is the universe born from chaos, it is chaos, right? And to think otherwise, like it's easy to look at the universe and assume it's full of order, but it's not. There's no order. It's no like everything is just crazy and wacky. That's the meaning of the multiverse. The great secret everyone else is just too dull-witted and cowardly to admit. Look around. Is there any pattern to this existence? Any order that gives it meaning? None. Not a one. The only order is the one that the addle-covered governors and Harmonian try to impose. Their order isn't natural to the multiverse. Why, the minute they leave, the multiverse reverts back to its natural state of disorder and chaos. So why do we fight chaos? So Chaos Attacks want to basically make sure that, that the universe is random and that we're not trying to impose order. Right. The points don't matter, and the scores don't matter, and the points don't matter, and we're making them anyway. So they disrupt. Now, I personally believe that this is probably the most annoying class or the most annoying faction. If there was ever a faction that was sort of like, we should just act randomly, we should just do something silly, we should just say nonsense stuff, it's this faction. And even their quote here is this person speaking in randomness. Beautiful is chaos. Too dim multiverse is to notice most the of. Right? Like their sentence is literally just a chaotic jumble. This is just annoying. Like I'm not saying that I don't get it. I mean, it's fine. Like that they believe that chaos is everything. But like when you think about like the chaotic stupid character, right? The person who's just like, I'm going to roll a die. I know my buddy George is here. George, this is you. You're a chaos attack. They're basically a faction of GMs who use oracles for everyday life, right? They're like, oh, well, what am I going to order? I'm going to roll. How many items are on the menu? There's 18. All right. I'm going to pull out a D20 and I'm going to roll, and I'll re-roll 19s or 20s. Okay. I'm going to order this. And what do you want for the side? That'll be random too. And they roll it. It's just like, it's weird and crazy and out there. My buddy, this is my buddy George, and he is a chaos attack in real life, and he says fair. What is Jonas saying? He's saying yes, he agrees. Only time I wanted to throttle a player. It's what my character would do. Yes, absolutely. I feel like it would be a stronger fit if it was more about skepticism of those who impose their grand order. The problem with that is we kind of already have that with like the Free League, and we kind of have that with the Bleak Cabal, right? The Bleakers, right? The Bleakers are the ones who believe that like there's no, where are they? That's a Doomguard. Here we go. They're the kind of nihilistic people, right? Who believe that there's no meaning to anything and that we should just, strike down. Right. I completely agree. The Bleakers are far more tolerable. I agree. I would like much rather use the Bleakers than I would rather use the Chaos Attacks, just because I find them to be just too crazy and too chaotic. And you're like, how is this even a faction? Like, wouldn't they just like fall apart and destroy themselves? And the last faction is the Outsiders, also called the Clueless or the Primes. These are people with no faction or no philosophy. They're just adventurers who wandered in from the prime material plane. And again, the great quote here. Hey, is this Waterdeep? So, I personally think, another great piece of Tony D art. I personally believe that we're so chaotic, we organize a society around it. Right. It doesn't make any sense. Not really. Now some of this stuff changed in the lore where there was like a big faction war, but I honestly wasn't playing Planescape by then, so I don't know any of this. I only know the stuff that I know. And so, at a fundamental level, so much of the book or so much of the game, I think, is these factions. And of course, if you know Blades in the Dark, or Forged in the Dark games, it is fundamentally about factions. I mean, Blades in the Dark is a game about a really cool city that everybody's kind of trapped in. Hell, Sigil's called the Cage. And, we kind of talked about that briefly. Here we go. So let me actually go back to this. So like one of the things that is kind of important to take away here is, it should be noted rather, is that, traveling the planes. No, I thought this was it. Must be on the Sigil and Beyond stuff. And so again, this is stuff that young Derek didn't really appreciate here, but this is what's the point of all this? What's the point of the planes? Part of it is golden glory, but honestly, and I like what they say here. Now, there's nothing wrong with this basic idea, but in a Planescape campaign, there are certain logical problems. Simply plotting to explore, loot, rob, clean out, Shekinah's Court of Light ruins the tone of the game, which the GM should be carefully fostering. Most treasures are owned by things that have a better right to them, the characters, and using wondrous magic simply as adventure bait cheapens its value to the campaign and the players, who come to think of it merely as just inventory. Meanwhile, adventuring just to advance, with absolutely no other goal, robs the Planescape setting of the sense of wonder that fills the bizarre universes of the Planes. So while advancement provides reward, it doesn't make adventure memorable. A cutter needs another reason to step through a portal. So already, right off the bat, this is sort of an indictment against the way that D&D is set up, right? I mean, D&D is set up to, kill monsters, level up, and take treasure. Okay, they just told you that that's not what this is about. They just said that they just kind of shot that in the foot. We're going to do some Rebus puzzles. Excellent, Sarek. Yeah, we'll talk about the Dabu. That'd be excellent. Actually, since Sarek mentioned it, I'm gonna cut ahead real quick. So these are the Dabus. Maybe. Oh, did my PDF crash? Maybe my PDF crashed. All right, hold a sec here. What happened? Not sure what happened. Okay. Weird. Okay, I guess I have to switch my PDF viewer here. Okay, well, I guess we're going to switch over here. So these are a monster, if you will. These are the servants of the Lady of Pain. They float through the air. They don't speak. And when they do, they create rebuses, which are puzzles that float above, that basically emerge from there as like floating symbols in the air. And it's like those puzzles where like they use symbols to represent words or parts of words. So like, like TH plus that symbol. I forgot how much I absolutely hate Adobe Acrobat. And, oh, it's crashing too. There we go. Okay. I have no idea what's going on. There we go. Wow. My whole computer was crashing. So let's see if we can... Davos look like they belong in a Jim Henson film. They absolutely look like something out of the Dark Crystal. Hey, Akemos, thank you for the super chat. Thanks for making a long shift more interesting. Does Planescape precede White Wolf stuff? The jargon, the factions, the weird world rules. So Planescape came out in 94. I think Vampire the Masquerade came out in 91. I want to say 91. So no, I would say that Planescape probably was definitely inspired by or borrowing from, White Wolf. All right, let's see if we can read this here. Okay, so TH plus hair. So there is, so that's snow minus S. So there is no, it's snow minus S. So no, right? So snow minus S is no. So there is no mistaking. There is no mistaking a dot dash T. Well, snow minus S is you're thinking the letters. You got to think of the pronunciation. Snow is S snow. Snow. So minus the S, it's just no. Even though it's now, it's no. So, okay. So there is no mistaking a... I don't know what this one is. Maybe it's supposed to be... it's probably... Okay. Oh, okay. It's a dot minus T plus Z. Dabas. Okay. There is no mistaking a dabas, nor, right? That's an N plus an or, like a paddle, nor, and then that's do off of a leaf. So there is no mistaking a dabas, nor do they, right? TH plus hey, nor do they nor do they try to hide, H-I-D, hide. It's a ham. Those are elves, right? Nor do they try to hide themselves. 1, 3, 5 are odds. So oddly, back to there. Speech, it's a peach, right? S plus peach is a peach, speech. Oddly, their speech is we have the translations here. Okay. Oddly, their speech is just. I guess it's supposed to be just. I don't know. There's a string of symbols. So that's the symbols. There you go. This could have been an email. So there you go. We had fun solving the rebus. So that's how these things talk. There is no mistaking a Davos, nor do they try to hide themselves. Oddly, their speech is just a string of symbols. Chest equals just. Yeah, that was kind of a weird one. I didn't get that one myself. Planescape nailed emoji speak before it was cool. Absolutely. So how many appear? Well, 1d8. You got to love old school D&D, right? There's no like CR rating. It's just 1d8 appeared. What was their armor class? 7. What does that mean in D&D terms? Their AC was 13, people. Their AC was 13. They had 4 to 8 hit dice. Their THAC0 depended on how many hit dice they had. They had 1 attack, which did D8 by weapon. And that was their XP value. So, anyways, point is, these creatures are the servants of the Lady of Pain. They don't speak. They emote symbols in the air. They float around. They're kind of weird goat-looking things. Very, very strange creatures. How are you supposed to use these? Nobody knows. And that's true. You don't really interact with them. They're like worker robots of the city. That's a great way to describe it. If you speak a language other than common, do the symbols change to something that makes sense for the listener? And now this is AD&D 2nd edition. I wouldn't put that up against them. It looks like it is constructed to your imaging, or to your understanding of language and symbols. Role playing the Dabos. How does one role play a race that speaks in pictures? So see, they're answering our questions here. The easiest answer is to simply have the Dabas not speak. They barely acknowledge the presence of others anyways. This is fine for common encounters where the strange race is part of the background or where their presence is not important. However, sooner or later, players and DMs are going to want to deal with these mysterious creatures. The DM can take 2 approaches to Dabos' rebuses. First, he or she can substitute some of the non-vocal means of communicating to simulate their strangeness. Pantomime is particularly effective this, like a game of charades. The DM states that the Dabos spews forth a torrent of undecipherable symbols, then resorts to pantomime to make itself understood. Thus, puzzling out what the Dabos is trying to say becomes a challenge that involves the players right at the table. Pantomime is handy for those times when the DM hasn't prepared any rebuses and the player characters suddenly decide to question the nearby Dabos. Second, if the DM is willing to prepare, he or she can create an even greater sense of the race of strangers. Knowing in advance that you will deal with the Dabos, the GM can actually draw up a rebus for them to decipher. Imagine the surprise of the players when the characters ask a question and the DM suddenly holds up one or even a series of rebuses as a reply. Finally, rebuses and pantomiming should be used for fun, not to bog down play. If the player characters aren't real, if the characters really need to know something important and the play acting isn't important, a non-player character bystander can always translate what the Dabos says. This avoids the players altogether This avoids the problem altogether, but it does lose some of the atmosphere. And I agree. Well, where are we at? It is past 9 o'clock. Look at that. All right. Sorry, I'm just checking something here. Okay, so I don't know what happened to my PDF. That's so weird. Anyways. Well, since the PDF seems to have died anyways. So that's Planescape. Now, I don't know how much of this carried over into 5e. That's actually a great question. They did do a book, right? What was it called? It's called like something. Sigil or something. They made a book. I just didn't I didn't own that one. Oh, there was a box set. Oh, hey, that's pretty cool. So I don't know. I don't know how much of that carried over into the 5e box set. I actually don't know. Bro, if I'm DMing and you ain't interacting with these dudes, I'm not doing charades. So, it's a I mean, it's cool that they did it. I didn't know that it was a box set. That's actually pretty neat. But very little carried over. Yeah, I mean, I expect it to be very watered down and very, milk toast. I mean, again, Planescape was part of that weird 90s era shit. A Planescape setting was about thought and about the power of ideas. And fundamentally, I really think that the game is not about dungeons and it's not about dragons. It's about those factions. It's about being player characters in a city, a crazy city inside of a Taurus, right? Hey, what's up, Dr. Metropolis?
DR Metropolis tipped $3. Question for the stream for me. Great Wheel or World Access Seller for E for your cosmology? Something different entirely?
So what Dr. Metropolis asked was, question of the stream for him. Great Wheel or World Access, which is the 4th edition cosmology. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I grew up with the Great Wheel. It was in my 1st edition DMG guide. I certainly knew it in AD&D 2nd edition. Very familiar with it from Planescape. It still technically existed in 3rd edition, but it was really, really, really just minor. But I never liked the planes. We did some stuff with the planes. We did some adventures to the planes. We even in 3rd edition, we did some adventures to the planes at higher level in our 3rd edition campaigns. Not often, but some. And a couple of our high level adventures like literally took place entirely in the outer planes. But 4th edition changed that for me. 4th edition, the world axis, the planes below, the plane above, the way that the astral sea works, the way that the elemental chaos works, is like, for me, 10 times better. It's less complex and unnecessarily crazy with all the different alignments. I mean, 4th edition stripped down the alignment system anyways. It does get away from this idea of this like philosophical border, boundaries between these infinite planes that extend in all directions, but somehow have borders. It's one of those things where it's like the alignment system or the plane system in D&D doesn't really make any sense unless you're playing Planescape. Like if you're playing a normal game of D&D, all this stuff is just crazy. Like why would you ever need any of this stuff? And why would this ever gets, it just gets too much. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the world axis, for sure. For sure. But yeah, so like I said before, Is it a good setting for D&D? I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I just think that, the D&D rules and I mean, I know people are like, oh, you could use D&D to do anything. Sure. I could also run a great political intrigue campaign with a game of tic-tac-toe, But, if you're playing a game that cares about what you believe in and it cares about how you believe in it, again, I think a Blades in the Dark campaign would be amazing. Fate would be amazing. Maybe Burning Wheel could be amazing as well. EU Arta as well. Oh yeah, exactly. Fate. Yeah, Fate would be good. If you have a group that wants to just sit down and like debate philosophically, you're there to play, but you also want to kind of just sit down and be like, who's right here? We should talk. Let's get into these philosophical debates with each other and really chew on the scenery. That's great. That's not what D&D is for most people. But in the 90s, there was this idea of like RPGs as an art form, Duel of Wits would be very juicy for sure. And they even they straight up tell you, look, the gold and glory, the level, killing things to level up, it just doesn't work in this setting. So I think running Forge in the Dark game would be amazing. I mean, number one, you've got the city. Number two, you've got the factions. Number three, you've got all these portals, which are great for doing these like missions, right? In Forge in the Dark games, like Scores and Blades in the Dark missions, like, you have somebody who gives you a key and then they're like, go to this place, go to this, do this mission. And you go to some crazy, weird plane. You have some crazy planar adventure, but you're always returning to Sigil. You're always regrounding yourself, back and back and back and back and back again. No idea if it's good or not, but someone made a Forge in the Dark hack of Planescape called Sigil or City of Blades. That's a great name. That's a great name for the campaign setting. And that's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a great fit, And I completely agree, Doc. Birthright, Dark Sun, Planescape, really. I mean, they really pushed stuff. I mean, you also had, Forgotten Realms, Greyhawk, Dragonlance. That's normal D&D stuff. A lot of that stuff, Planescape, Ravenloft, Birthright for sure, and even Dark Sun in its extremeness were very, very strange and really pushed the boundaries. And, arguably is part of the reason why, TSR went out of business. I mean, once you've come out with a setting like Planescape and, you release, a book like, I don't know, like this, like who's going to buy this book? Well, the people who already bought Planescape, the people who are playing Planescape. If you're just playing normal D&D, you're never going to pick this up. If you're playing Planescape, you're going to pick this up for sure. But, another thing, again, I cannot stress this enough, is like all of these books, and there's probably about like 15 or 20 books. So all of them had cover and interior art by Tony D. Tirolizzi. Thank you. And again, it just shows through and through and through that thematic tie together. And I think that's just so cool. You just don't really see that anymore, But anyways, this is a book all about more details about all those factions that we just spent all that time talking about. If you want more detail about these factions. And it's like, if you're playing Greyhawk or Forgotten Realms, you're not going to buy this fucking book. Yeah, you're not buying Silt Sea Splat if you're playing Spelljammer, correct. Yeah, except same way Braum was all over Dark Sun, Tony D was all over Planescape. And I think the game is definitely better for it. So yeah, I think, hey, they, is that familiar to anybody? Tales from the Infinite Staircase? Again, I've reiterated this before, and I will reiterate it again. All 5th edition D&D is just them reprinting and recopying old nostalgia bait, and new people don't know any better, and old people are like, oh, I remember that from 1996. So, and it's working. I mean, obviously it's working. You know, it's like Spider-Man or Fantastic Four, right? Aren't we getting like the fourth Spider-Man now or something like that, or not Spider-Man for Fantastic Four? I don't know. They just keep rebooting the movie, and every time they reboot the movies fail. So then instead of like coming up with something new, they just wait 5-10 years and then they just reboot the movie again. And they'll go, see, remember this? And then like they just never create anything new. So that is Wizards of the Coast strategy with 5th edition D&D. And I mean, I will give Paizo credit. You know, they kind of, here's everything from D&D, here's everything from Pathfinder 1, but at least now they're releasing stuff that does seem, it's like a little, it's new, it's interesting, it's kind of going, in different directions. Yes, 4E was new, and it did have a cohesive look, and it got punished by the market for it because the market was like, this is something new and different. We're not comfortable with that. We want the same shit you've been shoveling to us for 30 years, please, just repackaged and looking slightly different. What are you doing? You expect me to like invest in something that looks new and different? And then people said, we hate it. I mean, even to my mind, 4th edition is even the best looking edition on the shelf. It's clean. The colors mean something. Everything follows the same graphical layout. They all have the Dungeons and Dragons thing here at the top. And then there's the title on the binding spine. It's green if it's monsters. It's blue if it's player related. It's red if it's DM related. And then at the bottom, there's a little icon that is like represents the cover art, and they all have that. It's great. It's absolutely wonderful. And even like the monster manuals, like there's a theme to the monsters manuals, like right, like every monster manual. The first monster manual is, obviously a collection of creatures from levels 1 to 30. Now, I've argued this before. I do think that like the first monster manual should mostly be monsters that are low level, like 1 to 10, because that's when the book is coming out and people don't need higher level monsters yet. Also, higher level monsters are tougher to build, and it'd be better if the design team had like, an extra 6 months to 12 months with the system before they have to make another book. And also you need mostly lower, new books. But anyways, point is there's, 1 to 30 monsters, levels 1 to 30 monsters in here, but it also has one big bad, right? It's got Orcus, Demon Prince of the Undead. And he's, the level 35 character in this book. By the way, you can see it's color coded. I've got my green filter on, so it actually looks like shit. There we go. Oh, so everything's green. That's how you know it's a monster manual. Okay. And then there's Orcus. And then just like Monster Manual 1 had a bunch of creatures in it, and then it had this one big bad that it was, I don't want to say it was based around Orcus, but it's kind of that thing. You had Monster Manual 2, and that was based around Demogorgon, right? Another big bad, awesome level 35 monster, end of the campaign villain, big bugaboo. What about Monster Manual 3? Well, you guessed it. The Queen of Spiders herself, Loth. So like every monster manual was like another, like almost like another whole campaign, and then complete with like a big bad guy. It was just like such it was just like so well thought out, and then they just destroyed it because people were afraid of change. People didn't like anything that was different, and blah blah blah. Have you been watching the Mike Merle's interviews lately? He's had a lot to say about how 4E threw out the existing fans. I mean, I think Mike Merles has a chip on his shoulder. I'm not saying he's wrong, but I am saying that Mike Merles, I'm kind of taking what he's saying with a grain of salt to a certain extent. I will say that I do think that Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition was saying, like, look, what are we going to keep doing? Selling the same books, to the same people forever? I mean, case in point, they released 4th edition. It was new. It was different. And by and large, the people said, no, we want to keep playing the same game forever. And then they all went and played Pathfinder 1, which is the same game as 3rd edition. I mean, it just like so much is. I mean, by the end, with all the archetypes and stuff, yes, they had managed to make it somehow worse and more complicated. But yes, I mean, it's they did want to just keep playing the same game forever. So, and then when 4th edition came out and, 3rd edition came out, and now you have all this old school people, and people are like, oh, it's so cool to go back and play all these old school games. And it's like, bro, just go play BXD&D, go play Labyrinth Lords. Like, it's for like $5. I don't know. Like, we don't need all this OSR stuff, but we have them all. So I don't know. I'm not saying that he's wrong. I think that 4th edition was trying to find a new audience of gamers, and the new audience of gamers were people who grew up playing computer role-playing games, Diablo, and then at the time, I mean, World of Warcraft was such a phenomenon that it was hard to not think that was the future of gaming. So, and by the way, they've said this time and time again, 4th edition actually did sell well. In fact, even the people at Paizo have said 4th edition sold better than Pathfinder 1. It's D&D. What 4th edition didn't do was capture, I don't know, 10% of the World of Warcraft market, which is what the powers that be at, corporate master Hasbro were expecting it to do, which was, oh, we're going to make a game and we're going to get a lot of that Blizzard money. Well, they didn't. It sold fine. It just didn't sell to the level that they expected it to sell, which means from a performance standpoint, it was a failure. Shannon says, I always wondered what the next big bad would have been after Loth. Well, if we go by the green books, this green book here is Open Grave. And you'll notice it is a green spine, right? Because Open Grave is fundamentally a monster book. It is not a monster book the way that the monster manuals are a monster book, and that there's like, some other stuff going on there. But it's got some stuff going on there. It's not just monsters, but there's a lot of monsters in there. It's an undead book. Anyways, if we were going to go by that standard, then that would be Vecna, which is a level 35 solo controller leader and the final big bad boss of my first 1 to 30 4th edition campaign. Tiamat would have also been really good. Did we get a Tiamat? I'm trying to think if we did get a Tiamat. I don't know if we did. But we got a Vecna. And he's no slouch, people. Banished to the Dread Realm. Ray of Death. Necrotic Web. And look, I mean, I get it. Oh my God, it's almost half a page of really easy to follow text. God, what will we do? Anyways. And here's all sorts of Vecna minions. Anyways, what I also love about what they did with the gods here in 4th edition is like they also all had like aspects, which was like, kind of like an avatar. And it was like, significantly lower level. So like, obviously this is a level 35 creature. So, you're going to fight this basically at level 30. Whereas the aspect of Vecna is level 25. So you might fight that at level 20 or 21, right? So it might be a great way to kick off an epic tier or finish up a Paragon tier. But you kind of get to fight Vecna early to kind of see what you're up against and then fight the final big thing, at the end, which I think is really, really cool. Yes, the final BPEG can have a paragraph long attack. I agree. Ooh, here's a skeleton archer. Man, 4th edition was so good. And even look at the graphic design of this, people. See it? Do you see it? Even the stat blocks are green. Like everything monstrous is green, which is cool. Anyways, this book just had a bunch of monsters, a bunch of undead in it. Brain in a jar. So anyways, yeah. I need my Vecna to have a player spell list, so I'm forced to look it up. Yeah, I mean, I think it's awesome. I mean, it was one of my favorite things about 4th edition, Kurth, for sure. No, that's too complicated. We need to mix unflavor text next to flavor text at random. That'll make it easier. Absolutely. I'm not sure why, but I always swerve from genre-specific campaigns-based villains. I always felt like Vecna had to be an all-undead theme. Well, I think the difference, Chenin, is that for me personally, I don't run my campaigns as this is the Vecna campaign. And that Vecna was the big bad guy from the very start of the very first adventure, and you killed his 18th down the line lieutenant, who revealed that the 16th down the line lieutenant, who revealed that the 12th down the line lieutenant, who revealed the 9th down the line lieutenant, who revealed their sub lieutenant, who revealed their lieutenant, who revealed their right hand man, who revealed Vecna himself. That, the Rise of the Rune Lord style. That's not the way that I ran my games. Vecna emerged naturally, immersively throughout the course of the game. Particularly as it related to one of the characters, Nerix, a rogue, but then also one of our characters was serving the Raven Queen, and then through that sort of process, like the Vecna was trying to basically usurp the Raven Queen's power and become the god of death. And so like that really, Vecna didn't really emerge as sort of a villain. I mean, obviously he was a bad guy, but that wasn't their villain until like we were really into our epic tier. Up until that point, they were just adventurers going on adventures, doing adventuring things, and sort of, coming up with threats. And then most of the time, usually resolving those threats within an adventure. I think people fail. I think people fail to understand the power of being able to actually complete an adventure and not to have any and, the princess is in another castle. To just, I found a journal. Exactly. That's a lot of journals to find. Exactly. So, just to be like, hey, we went on this adventure. We kicked ass. We saved the day. The bad guy's dead. We won. And that's it. Roll credits. And next time on Dungeons and Dragons, or next time on Pathfinder, our adventures are in a new place doing a new thing. Not everything has to be part of this just like non-stop story. And one of the problems I have with so many of these campaigns is they're not campaigns anymore. A campaign is a series of battles. This is this is just one big long adventure. Jonas, we will get to Draconians when we get to Kryn, when we get to Dragonlance, but I tend to agree. I think the Draconians are really cool, and I thought they were really awesome, and their birth is really cool. Dragonborn felt very much, and I like 4th edition, and 4th edition introduced the Dragonborn, but God help us, it just felt like they were just tacked on because they were like, it would be cool to play a dragon person. Yeah. So Draconians are great. Let's see, can we do the Draconians? Okay. Boz Draconians. I think those are the least kind. Boz Draconian. K-Pax. There's another one I can remember. Sylvax, Aurochs, or Orax. And what's the 5th one? Boz. It's I think it starts with a B, and I always get it confused with Boz. Boz Draconian, Sylvac, Auroch, or Aurak. Auroch Draconians come from gold dragons. Sylvac Draconians come from silver dragons. K-Pack Draconians come from copper dragons. Boz Draconians come from brass. And then what comes from bronze? I don't know. All right, I don't remember. All right, I got to look it up. All right. What are the 5 Draconians? Aurak, Boz, Bozak. Damn it. K-Pack, Sivak. Okay, so I didn't remember Bozak. Dang it. No, that's okay. Sidetracks are fine. It's 9:30. We'll be done here. 4E does this well, Derek. You beat the adventure, but the DM guy will say, add this ring to point to the Orcus cult if you want. Yeah, I mean that I'm a big fan of like the adventure is over and done with, and you can claim victory. They do call the books adventures though. Maybe that'll catch on for campaigns. But now people think of the campaign as the adventure. Like the campaign just is like this one big storyline, which I just don't think is great. Karama says, next time on Dungeon Ball Z. Dungeon Ball Z is great. It's like Dragon Time Extreme, but Dungeon Time Extreme. Sorry, Dungeon Time Extreme, Dungeon Ball Z. Exactly. Thank you, Karama. I appreciate it. Exactly. That's how all these adventures are set up. It's just one never-ending story. But even Dragon Ball Z, right? There were very clearly arcs that ended and were kind of done with. Sometimes you had people come back and sometimes things get dealt with. But like once like a thing was dealt with, it was pretty much dealt with. You know, the characters remained, obviously, but that arc was done and we moved on. Do you think the time skip and spell plague impacted 4E player retention at all? The spell plague was the worst thing of all time, so I'm the wrong person to ask. I thought it was terrible. I thought what they did to Forgotten Realms was terrible. I thought that what they forced the authors to do, I thought the time skip was bad. I thought the spell plague was bad. I thought it was just like, it was way too much. It was way too much. 4E integrated the Dragonborn well into Dragonstone. I felt an offset of the Dre, another experiment. Yeah, but I just feel like we didn't need that. You know, I get it. They needed to put Dragonborn into, you know, Dark Sun because they're there. But yeah, I don't agree. So yeah, Spell Plague was terrible. I didn't even like what it did to the, you know, the novels. The Companions series from R.A. Salvatore is literally where I stopped reading Dritz because I was just like, what is this? I don't want to read this. Like the Companions are dead, but they're being reincarnated and they're like power leveling back up. And it's just like, yeah, I was not a fan. The whole like, oh, Abir is a separate world to Torel, and now the two realms are merging. And then what's worse is that was true for like 5-6 years, and then they unmerged them again. It was just like, oh, come on, this is getting too much. This is getting too much. So I'm not a big fan. We'll talk about that if we ever talk about Forgotten Realms, which we will eventually. There's a lot of settings that, you know, patrons want me to see. Like people want to talk about Mystara. Obviously, we still need to talk about Dragonlance someday. Which would be really cool for me because I love Dragonlance. I love Kryn. We can talk about Greyhawk. We can talk about Forgotten Realms. I mean, there's a lot of other smaller settings and systems in there. I haven't played them all, but I mean, most of them I have a pretty good knowledge of. But you know, we certainly have covered the ones that I've really played and done stuff in. Like Spelljammer is not one that I know or enjoy. It's not one that I've ever owned. Dr. Metropolis. Not saying that we couldn't cover Spelljammer, but it's not my, you know, it's not my entire thing. So. I think the Savage Coast is technically part of Mystara. I think the Savage Coast is part of Mystara. Same way that like the Hollow World is a part of Mystara. And so I think that's the case. But yeah. Aelia. I've come to enjoy episodic mini-series style play. It better complements sandbox style situations versus a convoluted railroad like we see in modern APs. And I couldn't agree with you more. I really like, you know, this ongoing, you know, you're just seeing the lives of these characters. I really love this idea of like characters go on an adventure. You know, let's use like a standard D20 game, you know, but we might be talking Forbidden Lands or something, but the characters go on an adventure and maybe it takes, you know, several weeks, you know, there's so much to say here, but unpack. But like one of the problems I have is like so many people are like, yeah, our campaign went from 1 to 20. It's like, how long did your campaign take in the game world? Like a month. It's like, what? You know, that's crazy. I love the idea of like a campaign, like you go on that first adventure and you guys get involved with a, you know, that's why they were called hooks, by the way, because the idea was that your characters existed in the campaign and the GM was like throwing out these little hooks for you to bite. Say, oh, except instead of being like a dumb fish, you know, you're like, oh, that sounds interesting. Let's go get entangled with that adventure. We're adventurers. That's what we do. We adventure. Maybe we're heroes, or we're in it for gold, or we're in it for treasure, or we're in it for glory, we're in it for reputation, but whatever, right? That hook sounds interesting to us. And the part of the whole idea of D&D is that the GM had several different hooks going. Maybe they had their adventures that they bought these modules, which were modular, to just drop into their campaign. And, you know, you could use it eventually. Maybe you don't use it this campaign, use it next campaign, or you had a subscription to Dungeon Magazine. And you could just have a bunch of different hooks going on. And the players would say, oh, that sounds interesting. We should go check that out. So the players travel overland. They, you know, they go to some, you know, village that's having a werewolf problem. And you start the werewolf adventure. And they're there for a couple levels. and they finish the adventure, and then the adventure's done, and then you have maybe like, I don't maybe that takes a week or something, maybe it takes 2 weeks, and then the characters are like, man, we have all this money, we have all this stuff, let's go like live and be adventure, and maybe we go and carouse, or maybe we go and buy our own inn and run it until we run it into the ground. And then like 6 months pass, or 18 months pass, or 24 months pass. And it's been a couple years, and time actually passes, and things actually happen. And then the adventurers finally they get the band back together, because there's not like, oh, we have to go immediately on to the next adventure. Why? Because the Rune Lord is rising. I mean, if you're heroic and you care at all about, I don't know, the safety of Varesia, you're going to just keep rushing down the plot points and just keep, you got to keep going, because the big bad evil guy is waiting. But I think there's something to be said about that. Hey, we beat the bad guy. We dealt with the threat, and there isn't some existential threat hanging over our heads. It's very hard to go, I mean, Final Fantasy can get away with it, but you're told Sephiroth is summoned meteor, it's going to crash into the planet in 3 days, but it's not really 3 days, because like you can go and camp 100 times. You can go race. You go, okay, Sephiroth, Eris is dead. Sephiroth has summoned meteor. It's going to crash into the earth in 3 days, and we have only 3 days to stop him. You're like, okay, let's go. I don't know. Let's go start a comprehensive breeding program of chocobos at the Golden Saucer and start, entering competitive races with our chocobos as we try to breed a golden chocobo so that we could get to some mystery island. Like, what? That doesn't make any sense. But that's exactly the type of stuff that's kind of cool to do in Party, man. And then you can't do when you have this pressing time. They can get away with it in JRPGs or CRPGs because people give that shit a pass. But that would never work in, a normal quote unquote campaign. So Reavers of the Harkenwold is very good. I shit on most things from Essentials, but I believe Reavers of Harkenwold came with the DM Essentials box set, and it was quite a good adventure. Yeah, I agree. I mean, certainly the thing that should tie everything together should be at least the PCs, right? The actions that the PCs took. But, I think that's something that's a gauge that you as a GM and even as a player, you can sort of dial in. Some players I think are totally fine just saying like, look, I just want to like go on cool adventures and get to experience cool adventures, save the day, win, level up, get treasure. And then, maybe we can just describe what my character does, and then we go and do the next thing. I don't necessarily need these interconnecting arcs, but you can very easily dial that up all the way. And the problem is that all these campaigns are dialed all the way to 10. Where everything is just a direct line from one adventure to the next adventure to the next adventure. That's what I don't like. So, okay, folks. Well, that was Planescape. There's obviously a lot to cover there, but I think we covered the essentials. We covered the factions. We covered the planes. We covered the idea of ideas and beliefs of Sigil, the City of Doors, the Lady of Pain, and how fundamentally I think it was a bad AD&D setting, and I think it'd be much better for something like Fate or Blades in the Dark or I don't know, Burning Wheel, or who knows what else. Could be a lot of other games, but maybe not D&D. Maybe not really. I think it's very good for like a mission-based campaign where based in Sigil, and you can, plane hop and go on these kind of like, I'm trying to think of it. It's kind of like Star Trek in a way, except Sigil's like your starship, but instead of the starship traveling, it's just you have transporters that can take you anywhere. And it's like every week you can just transport down to a whole new planet with a whole new situation and a whole new adventure. And that's just like Planescape, right? Where all you need to do is go through, if you're in Sigil and you go through the right portal with the right key, you're going to be in a whole new, weird, wacky place. You can have some great, crazy, awesome adventure. And then at the end of the adventure, be back on your ship, aka Sigil, and, and the story continues. So I think it's that same kind of idea, which I think is really, really cool and really interesting. So it was a setting bigger than the game it was in. That's a great way to put it. Yeah. I like that too. A series of vignettes. The stories are episodic, but you can have a whole arc. The other option, which TV has used for a long time, if you go back to X-Files or Buffy, is, Buffy was great for this. Buffy would have each season, right, would have the big bad of the season. And then you would have episodes that were just straight up Monster of the Week episodes. And then you would have episodes that were kind of more character building episodes. And then you would have episodes that were called, in X-Files, they were called Myth Arc episodes. So X-Files would vary between Monster of the Week and Myth Arc episodes. So Myth Arc were part of the mythology, the arc, the Myth Arc of the show, you know, that had to deal with Mulder's sister and the alien conspiracy and the cigarette smoking man. All that stuff was part of the myth arc. But it's not like every episode was a myth arc episode. They would throw them in occasionally. And then sometimes you would just get these random, weird, crazy, weird X-Files that Mulder and Scully had to go investigate, and they would, and, you know, deal with it. Although X-Files usually ended with sort of like a nudge, nudge, wink, wink, you know, like, oh, the thing is still around, or, you know, what they thought they thought they killed the only one, but there was another one the whole time. Just to make it a little bit more sinister and dark. But that's it. It didn't tie into anything really, you know, but those are some of the best episodes of X-Files, in my personal opinion. Or the most disturbing. Home, anybody? Home. I think it's like the only episode of like television that like Fox refused to air ever again or something. Anyways, point is, it's a great, X-Files was a great show. You know, my dad and I have never really gotten along well. And my whole life. But one thing that there were two things in my life that I can remember very much being on the same wavelength with my dad. The first was watching Band of Brothers and The Pacific. Those were great. And then the second was watching X-Files on Sunday. That was just always one of our things. And I always appreciated that. And he got it. He was a fan. So. All right. Yeah, your dad watched that together too? That's awesome. Yeah. That's fantastic. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining me today. It was a little fun walk down memory lane and got to bust out my Planescape campaign setting. That'll be cool. So enjoy that. If you're interested in Planescape, I recommend maybe this box set from 5th edition isn't bad. I don't know. I wish I had it. I would have checked it out so we could have compared it. But, you know, they don't like PDFs in 5e world for some odd reason. So it's kind of hard for us to do it anyways. Although now I have this top-down camera, so we could, you know, maybe do it. I am going to replace this with a more expensive camera, which my Patreons were able to donate to me. So fantastic. Thank you for that. And I'm going to get another nice camera so that I can do some really nice top-down shots, which I think would be a lot of fun to do. Okay, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining me this evening. I want to say thank you to everybody. Remember to like and subscribe. And if you want to be part of this conversation and you want to join and vote for polls and what we do next and all that other stuff, maybe join the Patreon, patreon.com/nights-last-call, link in the description below. Thank you to Alia, to Alia. Oh, it's been a while since I've said your name. Karima, Dr. Metropolis, Icamos, Trevco, Jonas, Alternate GM for the super chats and tips. It's very much appreciative. Thank you so much, folks. And appreciate everybody else who hung out and is a subscriber. And if you're watching this on the VOD, let me know in the comments below. Did you ever play Planescape? Did you ever travel the planes? Did you ever do any of that stuff? So, hey, there you go. That's a win in my book. No kidney stones, right? Well, were kidney stones. You just almost didn't notice them. But thank you, Jonas. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us. And we'll see you next time on Nights of Last Call.